Rick said note taking is on and the camera's on, so we'll call the meeting to order. And I heard someone say that the first order of business ought to be for the creators of the spreadsheets to explain them to us.
Okay.
I think that's a great idea. So let's see, we received spreadsheets from Patrick, Paul, and Jennifer.
Yeah.
Patrick's, I think, is probably the most self-explanatory and the quickest to go through, so let's start with that.
Okay. Pull that up. So I found, I think, almost 10 different communities that we can compare our rates to. They're very different. As Paul probably knows, every community structures their rates differently. Some of them even use different units, like, you know,
Cubic feet.
100 cubic feet
Yep.
versus 1,000 gallons. And just for everybody's education, 748, let me get this right, 748 gallons equals 100 cubic feet. So the rates, the fees that are based on per 1,000 gallons have been corrected for that missing 252 or whatever gallons. So they've been converted to 1,000 gallons per rate. So if you find yourself Googling Waterbury Town's rate and see that it's not $3.77 per 1,000 gallons, it's because it's been adjusted for that missing 250 odd gallons. So all that said is there's like different classes in the spreadsheet. So if you look at the water comparables or the sewer comparables, they're all the same spreadsheet with just appropriate rates for each utility. The town is self-explanatory. Waterbury, for instance, has different rates for their village versus their non-village. Rutland City is different than Rutland Town. And Heinsberg, I think, has, I could not figure out which, one of the sources I got for Heinsberg was undated, so I can't figure out when they issued that rate. But ultimately, most of them, or all of them, provided whether this was a metered or a non-metered rate. So if it was a metered rate, it's listed as such. The non-metered rates are bolded because that's something that we find ourselves in a weird position about how to set those rates. So those stand out as helpful comparables.
So how do we distinguish water and sewer here?
So there's a water tab and there's a sewer tab.
Oh, so it's the first page was water.
The first page is water, the second page is sewer. So I try to separate that out as cleanly as possible. There's different classes: residential, commercial, industrial. You know, there's kind of weird classifications amongst different towns as to what they consider residential versus commercial, industrial. Newport has residential and commercial industrial. Other cities have a residential rate. Some of them have a flat rate across all users, whether they're residential or commercial. Some of them have usage brackets. So if you find yourself in a higher usage bracket, if you're using, you know, 37,000 gallons a quarter, you are not a residential user, but they don't classify you as anything other than just a user with a high usage. So I've just kind of lumped those high usages in essentially in excess of our equivalent units, which is 13,500 per quarter. If those rates exceed that usage rate, I considered it commercial or industrial, right? Okay. If it's like a really high rate, if it's like upwards of, you know, 40,000 gallons or 100,000 gallons a quarter, I consider that industrial. So that's what the class system, the class column means. If it just says all, it means that they just apply the same rate to any user regardless of what they're zoned as. They're just applying it to per gallon or per 1,000 gallon usage. In each tab there are base and variable rates. Newport to me stood out as the only one with conflicting language as to what a base and variable rate is. Yes. A base rate is a flat fee charged to the user just for being hooked up, period, regardless of usage. You get charged the base rate up to 13,500 gallons If you exceed that base rate, you get charged the whatever 2 something plus the 3 something per 1,000 gallons. So then you're above 13,005, you're getting charged 5 something per 1,000 gallons, right? Other cities don't really call it that. They say this is your base rate. Some of them say you have a base rate for being hooked up, and that includes up to 4,500 gallons or 9,000 gallons. Anything in excess of that will be charged a variable rate. We have this thing called a fixed variable rate, which to me means nothing. I don't know what that means. Variable and fixed are two opposing words, so it doesn't make sense.
Very confusing rate.
So I'm glad that I'm not the only one who's looped by that.
It is easy if you understand the wording is wrong.
The wording is wrong, and if
Yeah,
you understand it, then
and
it's
It just doesn't
fine.
mean what it means.
It doesn't mean what it means. So
Well,
all that
It
said,
sort of does, it just is a different definition of base.
yes.
Yeah.
So all that said is the base rates across all of these communities are hugely different. Like we're talking $6 a quarter to $180 a quarter if you're an industrial user in Stowe. That's just the flat fee, regardless of how much water you use. If you're using in excess of your flat allocation rate, you know, Virgins, for instance, only charges you $1 per 1,000 additional gallons. But if you're in Heinsberg, you're getting or Manchester, you're getting charged $40 per 1,000 additional gallons. So the rates are wildly across the board. But in general, if you have a very low base rate, you're getting charged a lot per gallon usage. If you have a very high base rate, you have a pretty normal or expected quarterly usage, and anything above that is going to be charged at a moderate to low additional fee. So all that said is we have this data compiled. It's all in the same language that Newport City speaks, and we can just put this data aside for now until we come up with a rate schedule, and then we can figure out where amongst this range of other cities we fall. And it should not skew our judgment, it should not adjust our rates, but it should at least put us along the continuum to say, we're not any more expensive than Stowe, or we're not any cheaper than Manchester. And that's, to me, it's not necessarily fodder for the sheep of the town, it's just saying like, listen, this is reality. Other communities are facing these rates. This is where we fall. We are designated a city, we have sidewalk, we have streets, we have sewers, we have wastewater, we have water distributions networks, and in turn it has premium rates. So if there's any specific questions, I'll answer them, but honestly I think we can table this spreadsheet until we actually set rates and just present this to the public.
Did any of them have a base rate that was sort of a ready to serve rate based upon the potential usage of capacity? In other words, do any towns in Vermont that anyone's aware of charge a higher rate if you say have a 1-inch service line coming in versus a 4-inch line or an 8-inch line because of the theoretical potential demand on the system?
I did not see that. However, a lot of these rates are like, a lot of these rate schedules don't have a lot of explanation behind them posted on the city websites, the town websites, and so I did not find an instance in which like your service hookup, you know, diameter influenced it. I think it really comes down to, from my interpretation, virtually all these communities are metered 100%.
Yeah.
You know, so they recovered on the usage side.
They recover on the usage side. And where they aren't metered, they have a really high base rate.
Yeah, because Stowe and Waterbury, for instance, each have 2 or 3 breweries,
Yeah.
which impose substantial impacts.
And that's where the BOD comes into play with wastewater. The breweries are huge for wastewater.
Yeah.
So in the systems that I'm familiar with, they would address the size of the service going in when they did their connection application.
Yeah, okay, yeah, that's,
They would, so somebody requesting a larger connection is going to get charged a lot more than, you know,
but
call
right
it
up
an
the
impact
gate.
fee, but it's a
And-
connection fee.
Yeah,
So-
and it wasn't pipe diameter based, it was anticipated daily usage rate, if I recall
The,
mostly.
the calculation sheet we used, it was that was one of the factors. You had the size of the connection, anticipated usage,
Okay.
the size of the bill. I mean, there was 7 columns across. You'd add up their score,
There was, okay, yeah.
times it
So
by.
you determine the application fee.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
So that clarifies things, because from the outsider looking in, it's like, oh god, the applicant's supposed to figure this out, and how is an uninformed applicant of a small business supposed to know how much water they're going to use?
Right.
But it sounds like you guys figured that out.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
Okay.
This is really helpful. Thank you.
Yeah. I mean,
Well, it should be possible to take this and do some comparison math if necessary, just to see where we fall in the grand scheme of things.
Yeah.
Got it in.
and it's not perfect apples to apples, but it's as close as we're gonna get. Without, I mean, I never heard from rural water lady
Oh,
Liz.
you didn't?
Never heard back from her though. But you know, a couple of the towns were more than happy to give us this information. So
Okay, so Paul, Jennifer, which one of you wants to be up next?
I can go next. I have so many spreadsheets. Which one did I send?
Cost to produce water and cost to
Oh,
treat
the
sewage.
cost to produce water. Okay. So, what I did here, it's real down and dirty. I did move, I think I put a note in here. I did move the water meters out of the sewer line item into the water line item. So, interesting tidbit of information that really caught me off guard. So when I took the 25,000 out of the sewer budget and moved it to the water budget, the spreadsheet changed our revenues to match what the expenses were. So I got digging into it. The revenues are not based on a calculation. It is a hyperlink that merely goes from your expenses into
Yep.
your revenue with no calculation, instantly showing a balanced budget. That's got to change.
Yes. Yes.
Glad to hear it.
Yeah. First time I saw that, I was just flabbergasted.
Yeah.
And asked the question, what's going on? And the answer I got back was, well, this is an expense-based budget. So as if somehow that answered my question, which
Yeah,
it clearly
no.
didn't.
So, I mean, if everybody's employers here would take our home budgets and pay us accordingly,
It would work great.
it would
wouldn't
work
it?
great, right? But
Yeah, I might have to get an increase in salary for me too. It's gonna work that way.
so I wanted to point that out, and that's
Yes.
on. I've got it in my list of recommendations, my phase 2 recommendations. Okay, so I took. I did put the audited actuals for 2023 on here. I did not dig up the 23-24 ones. I think I got them right. Then I looked at the actual, the original 25-26 budget numbers with the meters moved. You'll see I did 2 different calculations.
that's a dollar figure.
That, yes, sorry, yep. So those are dollar figures. Then for the average annual water produced, I just took the last 4 quarters, did an average quarter, times it by 4 for your annual water production. And then I did rates per gallon for no capital reserve fund, and then the 15% on top of budget for capital reserve.
Okay, can I pause right there?
Yes.
So I found, I don't have a lot of them, but I found like per gallon rates of, honestly, I think an order of magnitude higher. At 0.02 cents or dollars per gallon. Is that?
Say that again, on what now?
So you see rate per gallon, no CRF,
Yeah.
0.0046.
Yeah.
That's dollars per gallon, That's a half a penny per gallon.
Did I put my formula in wrong?
I don't think so. But I think
It's
what
not
I
the
see
same
in some
water.
other cities is that at over a certain usage rate that they're charging more like closer to a penny per gallon. Rather than half a penny per gallon.
Right.
So it's just a no.
Yeah, I see what you're saying now, yeah. Well, and that's because I'm sure they have, capital reserve funds built in to their budget already, and that's one of the things that we need to address. I don't believe that we can just put 15% on top because we already have a passed budget. It will, for the next proposed budget, I think, when you put the budget out for vote and
You would have to
show,
include that.
it would have to include that capital reserve fund.
Yeah.
So somebody should,
The water and sewer budgets are actually to be voted on by the water and sewer commissions as opposed to town meeting.
yeah,
Yeah.
Separate.
yeah.
Except that they're not.
So,
But that presumably is something else that's going to change.
Yeah.
right, right.
We're working
But
it.
it hasn't been voted on yet, so that it is still to be voted on. That hadn't been voted on yet, so it can still be added. And then the town council, which is also the commissioners, could then vote on it.
She's right. If you look at the language.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, you could do it that way, yep.
Did they not vote on it at?
They did not.
Nope.
They have
Here's the language
Okay.
that I ended up using to finesse the distinction.
It was not.
Okay, because there was a whole discussion,
No shit.
yeah.
A second.
In addition, while Rick looks that up, we did find out when we asked Jim Johnson whether or not in that new budget, the debt cost for the east side water tower had been included. And he said, no, we had not yet included it. So there's another, I would say, probably, I think we got about 2 million in grants. So there's another $3 million that has to be averaged over a period of
service.
years, let's say 20 years, plus the interest and any administrative fees on that per year, which may be another $150,000 per year if we took the loan for, I don't know. I haven't figured out exactly how long you take the loan for, how much the interest would be, if you do it without administrative fees. But that would add to your 970, at least another $100,000 per year for that tower that we built and haven't paid.
So two things, I'll just say. One, the way that I finessed this, because I was very uncomfortable with trying to print this, is that the title of this was City of Newport Budget Report, Council Approved Operation Budget, Water and Sewer Budget presented on January 27, 2025. I'm agreeing with you. I'm saying I knew the challenge when I wrote that language because I couldn't come up with another way to finesse that language. And if you look on page 33 of this report on debt service, there's sewer bond principal, sewer bond interest. I don't see anything here. There's a loan RF1075. Do you know what that is?
That's
What
the-
page you on?
I'm on page 33 of
Yeah,
the.
but that
how much
wouldn't
rent?
be in there because that's the figures,
That's the
Fire.
sewer one.
Yeah,
You
that's
didn't
the s-
even put the water one in that book.
Right,
So that's why you produced the water budget elsewhere.
Yeah, the water, remember, we found that the water pages were missing.
we're missing
Missing
out of the annual report.
I've got a copy of them somewhere.
And to go back to the issue of voting, the council has only ever voted once.
I know.
The water commissioners.
So we all agree about this.
Yep.
We all agree. Nobody at this table is going to disagree with you.
So I got a clarifying question, like who is the water commissioner?
We are,
Yes.
the council, the
Council.
people who sit at this table on Monday nights.
Yeah.
What are you insinuating that is that
The charter made them the
like
made
five-year
water
capital stuff,
commissioners
or is
Yeah.
that just
into the
a
council,
fund
or
to-
the council into
No,
the
it's a
Sure.
five-year
Yeah.
capital.
When it's
You can
opened
fund
up
up
the
to
city charter
15% of your
back
budget
when-
every year.
in
Okay, so I'm hearing
1910.
two questions that come up from this. One is the assumption, which would be a logical assumption in any other community, Paul,
Right.
that we can't tinker with next year,
Right.
may not be true, because we
Because
never
of-
voted on it as a
Yeah,
council.
yeah.
So in
Yeah.
effect, we'd be asking the council to vote on a budget on Monday night that's adjusted appropriately, and then following the vote, to say, okay, now that we've agreed on this, this is what it's gonna cost to run this thing in 25, 26, now here's the rate that we're gonna set in order to hit that. Right? And maybe that's the best way to approach this at this point. If we can get to the number that we think the full water and sewer budget ought to look like, then I don't have any trouble trying to make that case at this point.
Yeah.
Well, I may have trouble doing it, but I don't have any, I'm willing to do it.
No moral qualms.
No moral qualms about it, right?
So, I mean, I have what I call the task force working budget where I moved the meters, that stuff.
And where is
Which-
this?
I have not shared that
Okay.
yet, but I can. You know, I've got it broke down. I show original, then with the capital reserve fund, and then what the total budget would be. I was curious. Well, before I get on to that curiosity thing, let me go back to the calculation sheet. So based on those numbers, you can see the minimum that has to be charged to break even. Now, if that debt service isn't included, those numbers are going to go up slightly. I mean, it's almost $1 million in water, so if it was 70,000, it's not going to change those numbers horribly. Now on the next tab, the sewer cost, you'll see I did not back out Derby flows because I was hoping Derby flows and payments because I was hoping that we may have an answer about that number that's in the budget, if that's based off the formula or if that's just a guess. Does anybody know? Tom, were you able to find anything? Or actually, Stacy's gone, isn't she?
Yeah, she's not here.
So we'll have to. I mean, again, in a $1.7 million budget, if that number is correct, it's only 140,000. It's not going to change your per gallon treatment cost by that much.
Right.
So, like I said, this is just quick and dirty math, what it costs to treat the sewage, what it costs to pump the water out based on the proposed budget. So you can see that I calculated the per gallon per 1,000 gallon base rate, and then the over EU rate was 4.2. So, I mean, percentage wise, it's looks like a very large increase, which it is. So, the difficult part is going to be determining what our base rate is and then what we're going to charge per 1,000 over that base rate. My thought is that when you go over your base, if we maintain the base of 13.5, you start going over your base, then you pay more per 1,000 gallons because you're putting more stress on the system. You don't get cheaper if you use more.
I will say that I didn't come across any other towns that had $13,500 bucks. $500 100 gallons per quarter. I
Yeah.
saw 9,000, I saw 4,000 as a setting as their
That was gonna be my question, why are we, I mean, I
So-
understand,
They developed, from what I've seen, they developed a 13.5 based on an average house using 150 gallons per day
over
times 90
92
days.
days,
And,
90 days.
Yeah.
and to let you know, we could not get it any lower than that because at the time we were doing this, the standard was 225.
Wow.
We were killed at going below 18.5.
And that's because we're not fully metered. We can't actually say with any certainty what the
No,
average usage rate
I
is.
think I flowed things differently and you haven't seen what I flowed, but most of our people are under 13.5.
Oh, I don't doubt it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and that's one of the things. I mean, but we had to fight to get the 13.5.
Sure.
And to complicate it even further, for people in new construction, new residential construction, a 3-bedroom house is required to base all the calculations on 420 gallons per day
Yeah.
of water coming in.
That's what you asked of
Water
them?
coming out.
That's the state.
Yeah.
That's,
That's
Yeah.
for state wastewater permits.
Yeah,
Oh,
That was
for
low.
septic, for standalone.
Yeah, that was
Okay.
lowered
Yeah.
about 10 years ago because of the recognition that people were starting to use low flow fixtures. The old standard was 450 gallons per day for a 3-bedroom.
That's 10 baths per day.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Think of the life you could be leading.
Oh, man. Okay.
Don't tell the
So-
teenagers.
So are you suggesting that we change the equivalent unit, or do we stick to that and change the rate?
So here's where we're stuck between a rock and a hard place. If we change the equivalent unit, then we are going to put all of the burden on the unmetered people.
Mhm.
If we were all metered, we could change that EU
And be fair.
lower and be fair. But if we mess with that EU, we're putting everything on people that are unmetered, and they're gonna rightfully be screaming at the city. Why aren't my meters in? So that's where we gotta be careful with this temporary rate. And then, looking at what we're gonna use for a industrial commercial EU too,
Mhm.
versus, it should not be comparable to a residential. I don't feel it should be compared to a residential.
May I ask a quick question? As someone who doesn't use the sewer system, I have a septic. So I understand the water meters, it's the amount of the water coming in to the residents,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So what do you base the sewage on? Is there,
Same usage.
How much went in?
Yeah,
oh,
yeah,
okay.
yeah,
So like I get screwed because in the summertime I probably dump twice as much water in my garden than I
Right.
do down the pipe.
right,
But it's just the nature of the system.
right. And that's
So I'm
the
just,
nature everywhere.
I'm
a lot of people.
So how does that, okay. I guess it's just, because I'm not paying a sewer rate,
Right, just a water
I'm just
rate.
paying a water rate
Right.
coming in.
Yep, yep,
Your sewage is going into your own
Into
receptacle.
a tank and then
and we're
every
not touching
3
it and
years we have to
processing
pump
it.
out, so we pay whatever that,
right.
Yep.
okay.
So, any questions on the down and dirty math on the per 1,000 gallons for a balanced budget?
I think we're gonna have to come back to this. I mean, this is the heart of the matter right here.
Yeah.
I'd like to
Yeah.
hear
The
what Jennifer has to
problem
say.
is
Yep.
the loss,
Yeah, and
the
then
gallons lost.
Right, so
That's I think the big unknown.
it is.
So and sewer doesn't include that. Sewer just includes the 15% capital fund.
Well, the good,
Water assumes, or has a second section where it assumes losses, water
Yeah,
distribution.
What, 14%?
Yes.
Yeah.
I don't think we have a choice other than to use an assumed loss rate, because
Yeah.
otherwise we're undervaluing a gallon delivered to a house.
right,
And in terms of the city, we cannot do that.
no,
So I honestly, like, your upper table's great, but I think it's kind of negligible on that first tab, cost to produce waterworks rates.
Oh, without the CRF?
Yeah, no, without the 14% system loss.
Oh,
Yeah.
gotcha.
So it's helpful, but I think we gotta move forward, assuming
Right,
that, yeah.
right.
Okay.
And just to be clear, what this doesn't include is any projected debt service for the water tower, and it doesn't include the 15% fee for future capital improvements yet.
Well,
Well, one line does.
One of them does.
the second line right here includes
Oh, that one
50%
does.
capital reserve fund.
Actually, hang on just a second. I'm gonna do one more.
Assuming you didn't.
Well,
Yes.
Jennifer's explaining hers. Oh, one thing, when I do send this, budget, the one that I hadn't sent to you guys, what I call my working task force budget, where I moved meters out of sewer into water. You're gonna see, and I'll do that before we leave here, you're gonna see a bunch of the pink highlighted stuff. That's when I sat down with Tom, and that's everything that we could determine was associated with salary and benefits for whoever, okay? Well, when you scroll down to the very bottom, when you get this, when you scroll down to the very bottom of the water expense tab, you're gonna see I got curious and I tried to figure out what percentage of our budget was salaries and benefits, and it seems a little high to me. On the sewer side, almost 30% of the budget is salaries, benefits, and such. Then on the water side, it's 24% of the budget. So the two combined, almost 27% of the budget is salaries, benefits, and so I think down the road, that needs to be looked at in a little more detail. And that will require, I guess, Jim and Stacy to sit down with us and, hopefully give us a little more detailed information. But I will send this to everybody.
Okay, yeah, we're not looking at that right now.
No,
Okay.
but I wanted to point it out that when you
Just
scroll
flagging
down,
it
it's
for
there.
Phase 2 conversation.
Phase 2, exactly.
Okay.
I'll just say one other quick word about that Phase 2 conversation. I was in a meeting today with Carter and Jim and Robin from downstairs with Chip Stearns from NEMRIC. And we're going to come with a recommendation, I suspect, on Monday night for council to sign a contract with NEMRIC to function as basically our interim finance director and help us to, first of all, identify the immediate questions that are obvious to them that aren't obvious to me, or so far not to very many other people, about kind of what the current numbers say, but then to also work with us to make sure that we've set up the budget the way that it ought to be set up today,
Yeah.
with the right GL codes and everything else. And they'll work with us over a period of several months to try and get to the heart of the questions that you're talking about, I think.
Yeah. Okay.
And I think that's the clearest, quickest way to get to it. Because honestly, I don't think Stacy and Jim can really answer those questions right now.
Yeah, and NIMRIC they'll put things in the appropriate category.
That's right.
You won't have some salaries tucked under equipment and stuff like that. So, unfortunately for Tom, he's going to have to learn the new numbering system. But
Hold on.
This system, Chip Stearns worked on this system when it was designed in 1996. And that was the last time he knows of that it's been, anybody's taken a careful look at the underpinnings of it. So it's been 30 years.
I don't want to hear that.
Yeah. So we should probably work through water completely before we hit sewer, just to avoid jumping back and forth.
Well, I want to go
Does that
back and make
sense?
sure, Jennifer, did you have something that you wanted to add to this conversation?
No, I don't have a copy of my spreadsheet, but I went through and approached things differently, and you guys don't have any of this because we just finished it up. One of the things was I did go down to city offices and found out that unfortunately Paul's assumption apropos of the minimum use of the water is out. Still about 8 million gallons is going to our top 4 users. So that's sort of an incredible sort of thing.
Okay, can you point to, that's the removed double counted gallons?
No, the double counted gallons is meters running backwards.
Oh, right.
When you
Okay.
look at the, let me see if I can get the water part. If you look on the water, okay,
Yeah.
the industrial water says 11 million.
Industrial water, 11276.
Yeah. About 8 million of that is, let me see if I can get the right sheet up. Computer, I did most of this on, decided that it would freeze on working on Excel. And so I switched over, so that's why I don't have all of my figures. Sorry, it's not 8, it's 5.6 million gallons is Columbia Forest Products, the hospital, the prison, and I just picked it as probably not the biggest one, the motel. And checked on some of the things like Bel Air, some of the big users that we have. But most of the users in the commercial industrial are low key. I mean, they're ones that were coded there. Some of them are offices,
Yeah.
things like that. So literally the estimation of what the average use
Right.
is wrong.
Yeah.
So I think one of the things that
You're saying because such a big chunk belongs to just those top tier,
yeah.
that we've inappropriately distributed it across all the rest of the users.
Paul has made a right assumption. The problem is it's wrong. We're seeing the same thing in the residential, because if you take the nice thing about the detail we have, if you take the base rate, technically you should be able to divide the number of meters into the base rate.
Right.
And see what is happening. When you do that, I was flowing percentages. If we do a percentage increase, what's going to happen, what we're going to have for income. And I'm sitting there going, you know, I got a $4,000 increase on something I should have 8,000 to 10,000. And I said, what the hell's happening here?
Yeah.
Until I backed it out. Because what's happening is if you're using under 13.5, you got a meter, Paul's counting it as 13.5,
Right.
but they're using, you know, whatever, 5,000.
Or 5, right.
Yeah, and so you can back out and figure out where everything is, and that's how I can say, that's a fact, literally more than half of our meters are under that 13.5.
Yeah.
So, and the same thing is happening with our commercial. I printed out and brought it in, the commercial that are not metered yet. It's not gonna be worth it. It's not gonna bring in anything close to your minimum suggested of, what was it, 40? No.
40,005.
Yeah, that's, you can't go with that. The ones you might be able to pick up on are the ones that are keyed on this sheet as sewer, not sewer, sorry, as apartments.
Okay.
And those are all the apartments that are unmetered, and that's a significant number. That's the
And the
top line.
apartments are in which category?
The apartments are in a category of their own, and let
They
me see
are.
if I can get to that spreadsheet.
So which,
What I sent to you, there's one of the things that says APT, and why am I not seeing it here? I don't have my complete spreadsheet, which is a problem. Should be if you go to
There's one called apartments on the sewer one, but I don't see it on the water one.
apartments is the first one on our billing, so if I find the right billing here for this one, there are 52 unmetered apartments bringing in $20,000.
On the sewer.
They're the very top of the rate sheet before data. I also detailed what the data was. Those, considering what they are, they're 2 and 3, they're billed by units. So those 52 are either 2 units, 3 units, 4 units, and they double the rate based on however many units they
Okay,
have.
that is consistent across a couple other municipalities. They
Yeah.
charge you per base rate per unit.
Yeah,
But I don't know if that means that there's a meter at every unit.
Generally not, generally there's one
Yeah.
meter where the service comes in.
Yeah, okay.
and some of the apartments have converted over to metered, and therefore they're gonna be under a commercial.
Okay.
But some of them have not, so mainly our apartments are two families. Some of these are three, I don't think any of the major ones are not.
And so why don't we see that apartments in the water?
In the water, yeah.
Well, you do,
Is it
I
under
guess maybe,
residential?
it should be, it's 20,000. So,
Which time period are you in?
I'm in,
Yeah, it's on the sewer one
Yeah.
as apartments, but I don't
Right,
see
but
that
that's
category
a
on
sewer
commercial.
income, not where, so where's their water income?
So one thing to note is that there's 719 residential water, 858 residential water meter
Yeah.
base, but there's only 734 sewer meter base.
yeah,
And
you're right, it's not on water, so.
residential sewer only says 511. So I don't know if the water apartments are lumped with residential because those account totals are different.
Yeah. I ended up just seeing it and getting it printed out. It didn't occur to me that I was not seeing both ends. Because I looked up one of the bills and I can tell you they're paying $161.80. So is that, how's it?
For water?
Yeah, 381 is the sewer,
Oh, wow, okay, so that is monthly units.
so. What the hell is our rate schedule here? Oh, there it is. Okay.
Apartments code. Apartments
That's weird.
code.
Well, yeah, that it's paying double, it's paying double on, water and double on sewer. I don't know where it's reporting, for water. But certainly the bill I looked up that I have here is, those figures are double the current base for connected residential on both water and sewer. But that's something that, that's going to be one that's gonna go either way, depending on what's happening with the apartments, but they're all two families. So it's not major. But more major is literally the way we're assuming what the minimum base is what I found on it. And the good thing is, when you look at the rates, we do know how many industrial they are, though they're technically paying about the exact same rate. The metered ones are all paying the same rate. There's some sort of slight difference between commercial and residential on the non-metered ones. But technically, there's 17 non-metered commercial. They aren't major. It's the homeowner.
So, off topic a little bit. Before Becky left, did she cross-train anybody?
She doesn't have time.
No, because she didn't leave, she went on a medical leave.
Yeah, right, yeah.
So the only person who's really had a sense of kind of what was going on is Stacy, who's been working in the spreadsheet that Becky created.
Yeah.
But that's all we've got.
And I think one of the things is the billing's all downstairs. The spreadsheet all came upstairs, and you can see the percentage increase, and they've all gotten out of whack because they've done whatever it is, a 7% across the board has changed depending on things. Because before you could take the base rate was, the same as the number of gallons
Right.
times the 1,000-gallon rate.
Right.
And so everything aligned effectively, and now it's gone sort of skew-G. So it's one of these things that technically, if you look at the system, I guess because I helped with it and understand it,
Right.
it's fairly simple.
Yeah.
You're using the same multiple. It's just now when you look at it, it's more complex because it's still broken down. The sewer, the water and or sewer for both residential, commercial, and industrial, if they have a meter, they're all paying the same rate.
Right.
Yeah. And,
That's, yeah.
you know, be
Yeah.
that right or wrong, but that was the easiest way because it was the KISS theory of doing things.
Right.
Because we did not know if there was a water connection to your house, whether somebody turned it on or off.
Mhm.
That's where we established the base minimum. Because just to have water go to that property
Right.
is, you know, there's a cost. If they turn it on at some point, you know, without a meter, at some point they'll find them. But I think that's one of the things we found. There were a lot of, you know, houses they turned on and off on their own. And then the other thing is, you don't know when a single-family dwelling becomes a two-family dwelling. So it just was, you know, keep everything as simple as possible because we realized we didn't have within the city the reporting
Right.
of the changes that are happening.
Right. But
Yeah.
I mean, but the city is at a point right now where we have to implement a stopgap, and it's going to hurt
So,
Yeah.
everybody.
are we hung up on the sorry to
No, that's fine.
elaborate. Are we hung up on the apartments?
I think we're hung up on the philosophy of the whole thing. I mean, my suggestion is, if you want to avoid really people not understanding what you're doing, you do two things. One, you do the adjustment that was through the non-metered sewer out of whack. Bring that back so it's consistent to what, you know, the November rate increase was, so everybody's the same percentage for water, for sewer. And then from there, we do an adjustment that's hopefully gonna cover us for a quarter or two and see, because we really don't know what the long-term effect is gonna be of the November increase. We've got the least amount of usage during this time frame.
Yeah.
This is our slowest time frame for doing this. So if we flow these figures, and Paul was right, he went back, I took out the quirky figures that we had and came down
Yeah.
with a totally lower, you know, average of.
Per
of-
user.
Average overall, and then average per user. Because of the.
But you're still producing the same amount, and it still costs you to
I-
produce that amount.
One of the things I did was I looked at what our production was, okay, and assumed that that production had to be picked up by all the ratepayers.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
And that ended up, I think, that we had a 40% increase in sewer or something,
Yeah.
you know.
Right, which
But
is
I
what
think-
my spreadsheet does,
Yeah.
is assume that everything produced, and,
Yeah.
and
It's gotta be covered by someone.
Yeah.
it's got to be covered by
Yeah.
somebody, and we have the sewage flows.
Yeah,
That's a given. I mean,
Yeah.
whether it's coming from domestic water or
Stormwater
infiltration
inputs.
or
Yeah.
whatever,
Yeah.
we know what's
Yeah.
going through that plant.
yeah,
And I would make the argument that we should not try to split hairs about what's produced wastewater and what's infiltrated
Exactly.
wastewater, because
Yeah.
ultimately they're gonna still have to manage it, and
Yep.
we
And I
need
think-
money
yeah.
to manage our stormwater system,
Yeah.
period. So like, if it goes back into the DPW,
yeah.
it's still going back into the water management system.
So under that theory, I ended up looking at what we had for usage to February and did the back out to try to figure out, you couldn't just do across the board because of the use. So that's why I was flowing per category to see what was happening and got, you know, slightly different figures that way than doing it across the board. But I really think, you know, somehow we've got to cure the, you know, the problem that we have with non-metered sewer. I think that's the one that went up, what, 28% or something? Yeah, but I think overall, I was looking at one and decided that I would just put the computer down at 40%
Yeah.
increase.
Right.
And I don't know if you were seeing about the same thing.
Yeah, I mean,
40% increase in what specifically?
In all of the rates,
Okay, base and variable for both water and sewer.
yeah,
Okay.
just keeping the same structure, because I
So-
think one of the things was that many years ago, and I don't think anybody in this room, maybe John would remember, that the city of Newport reappraised and went from voting a budget to voting a tax rate. That was the world's worst thing. Everybody was totally confused because they didn't know what their house was gonna be appraised at. And then, they couldn't figure out what the budget meant because they couldn't figure out where they sat in the budget.
Voting a tax rate was sort of the 19th century approach, and pretty much everybody abandoned it. And anybody that tried to go back to it abandoned it after a year or two because, for that very
Yeah.
reason, it's totally confusing.
Yeah,
So if we, I really don't see how you got to just a 40% increase because it's costing us.
no, I was at 40% and went sort of bonkers and stopped,
Yeah.
No, I think it's higher than that,
Oh, yeah, okay,
yeah.
okay.
I mean,
Right.
I don't know whether you can recover it in one.
This is where I want to like kind of put up a wall about getting into the weeds and just like start
Yeah,
running some
exactly.
50% increase scenarios and see where that puts us in terms of like annual like revenue and compare that to cost, because like I feel like we've done enough homework to understand like
Right.
where the questions are, where the gaps are, where we could potentially simplify this rate structure, but ultimately I think we should start playing with some numbers and
So-
scenarios.
Right, so if we take a look at the 14% water loss,
Yeah.
Yours?
we need to charge $5.36
Per thousand.
per thousand to break even for the amount of water we're producing in our budget.
That's not including the 15%
That's
capital.
not including the 15%.
So just real quick, if we're looking at the 15%, that's $6.17 per thousand in excess of the
Okay,
base
so-
rate, right?
What
On
is
top
that
of
for a percentage increase?
Does that assume,
So that is just the production cost, that's not assumed, that's how much water comes out of our wells and we pump into the system and how much our budget is.
Got it, so it's got nothing to do with base rate.
Nothing to
Okay,
do with
okay.
base rate, nothing to do with, exactly.
So
Okay,
the interesting
and
part
that
about
includes both fixed and variable costs, that's total cost all in for water?
That's no fixed cost, that's no variable cost, that is for every 1,000 gallons, we have to make $6.17
For the system.
for the system to break even.
Gotcha.
and that
Okay,
includes like admin
$6.17.
and
That,
okay,
the
okay.
budget as it stands, the only thing different is the meter pull out from sewer into water, brought the water budget up a little higher, dropped the sewer budget a little bit.
Okay. So
And it doesn't include what was mentioned earlier with the water tower.
It does not.
No.
All, the budget
As
as it was, yeah,
Okay,
as it
where's
was
your
given.
figure, 6 what?
What's the projected timing for the water tower
6:37.
coming online?
July.
They said July 21st, but the schedule they're going right now, they're gonna beat that, I think.
I was gonna say it looks pretty damn close.
So then we're gonna need to pay starting July.
That's what I'm
something.
leading up to is when,
Oh,
by then we'll know what our net cost over and above.
Right, which I'm remembering is what we ended up with at our last meeting, where we said, okay, we don't try and deal with the cost of debt at the moment, we do that as a midsummer adjustment.
So currently
when we know what the
operations.
actual cost of debt is, that's where we kind of left the last meeting.
right.
We didn't decide anything, but that was kind of on the table as a way to go about it.
So that gets into the question of if we approve a budget for the coming year, the caveat is going to be that it does not include any debt service.
Unless I actually feel a little agnostic on this. I'm not clear myself about the best way to go about this. It may be that what we really ought to do is what I did for the fire truck debt service when I did the operating budget last January, which is I did a wild ass guess, took a number for the full amount of the bond, divided it by the number of months left in the year, and came up with an approximate number and threw it into the budget as a placeholder.
So if you added $100,000 more to the budget, not 970, but 1070, for instance, what would that do to your $6.17 per gallon?
From what we are right now.
It would change it by So you're talking $1,070,070 to change it by like 60 cents per 1,000 gallons.
Yeah,
Yeah,
60 cents.
About
So if
677,
you-
So
678.
667 or 670 per thousand
Or if you
gallons.
came out to $7 per gallon, just sort
Per 1,000.
Yeah,
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 $7.
per 1,000.
Yeah, that would cover the loan.
It would.
And so that would put us in, assuming that our base rate doesn't change and our base rate is accounted for in that operational budget and cost and revenue.
When you say base rate doesn't change, you mean
Our
the base?
47.19 per quarter
The metered base.
metered base. So okay, let's back up a little bit.
Yeah.
So your table down here, all numbers below assume a 14% system
Yeah.
water loss,
Yep.
and we got 536 per thousand, 617 per
Yep.
thousand.
Yep.
Is
So-
that not accounting for the base?
That is strictly
Oh,
every
Total
1,000
gallons.
gallons.
oh,
We need to make that much.
Okay,
So what
okay.
that would do is if you said your base was 13.5, you wanted everybody to pay for 13.5, it would be.
divide that by 1,000 times by 536 or
Right.
617 or whatever.
Would be.
So that's like $28.
Yeah. So if we did, yeah.
I'm of the school that we get rid of this arbitrarily set base rate and we put a nominal fee for the base hookup rate and we charge per 1,000 gallons and we just charge per 1,000 gallons.
I think if you just put in like a minimum, I mean, that's what it was. It was the minimum.
$35
Yeah.
per quarter, regardless of what you're using. And if you're using over 1,000 gallons, you get charged $6. If you're using another 1,000 gallons, you get charged $6. If you use 40,000 gallons, you get charged $12 or something like that.
Okay,
you know?
which works until you get to the non-metered houses.
So you-
And
Well,
for the
what do you do
non-meter
with those?
houses, we do our back of the envelope calc where we assume they're using 300 gallons a day.
Yeah, I
And
forget what
we're
that
charging them at
calculation
that.
was.
That
I
same
think it was
$6
200.
per thousand. Well, he showed us numbers that showed some of these unmetered might be using 350, 400 gallons a day.
Right.
You know, so like we can't really assume that they're on the low cusp.
We had
Because
that.
they have preferentially selected themselves out of the metering.
Yeah.
Right. The average being used on a daily basis for what is assumed
What
to
we
be
can't account for.
right is we have some highs in there of 284 and 384.
And what are the lows?
That's, okay, those are problems. The lower
Those
one.
are where the meters were
Yeah,
backwards.
if.
That's why I highlighted in
Yeah,
red.
so if we take
My head's
those
gonna
out.
explode.
When you take them out, then what happens is your average will be just the average of the 6 quarters, not 8.
Right.
And it'll drop down to 11,000. Because I did that, but it's somewhere by them, I'm not finding the sheet here.
Average.
Oh, there it is. 11,609 is going to be
And
the
then
average.
divide that out by.
I just
divide it out.
I just pulled it out of there, just used your same thing to average.
Gotcha.
Down,
I'm lazy.
charge more for.
Can I throw
I
a
just want to
compare?
hear, where does that calculation lead us?
It puts us at 100, an average, so if we pull those highlighted ones out, it puts us at an average per connection of 130
Per day, for
Per
meter
day.
usage.
for the, yep,
There we go.
Yeah,
Yeah.
which is still lower than we thought.
Yeah, so we add a little bit on there to make sure we're covered,
Yeah,
Right.
yeah.
and we're in the ballpark.
and so if you do the 150, which they used to get to 1350.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You're back there.
And that's like 12% increase from that, what you just calculated or something. 12 or 15%.
Right, 'cause our
you know,
base-
Buffer.
Right. So on this, I mean, the variable water rate's gonna go up 3 times. Yeah, 3 times what it is now.
Well, considering the variable rate that we're using goes hand in hand with the base rate.
It does, the way it's set up, yeah.
Yeah, so the way it's set up, so I would say just keep that, you know, because it's doing the same thing. We've got one rate, we just call it two rates. The only thing that saves on this is if you are under 13.5, then you are going to end up paying less than what hooked non-metered residential is paying. You're gonna pay for your usage.
Right. So if we,
I think the simple thing, if we want to get to a dollar figure, we use what we have for the meters and just change a percentage rate on what they're getting and flow the numbers that way. That's what I ended up building up here, was flowing it based on.
right, but does that bring in $1 million?
We can bring in whatever, what do we want per quarter? I've got
Well,
250.
we want 900 and, well, we want a million.
So if we change it to,
Hang on.
well, if we add 100, which is, you know, just an out of the hat number, that would bring it to 1,070,654.
Correct.
Yeah.
Okay, hang on a moment.
So
Equals.
if it's easier to do the math, maybe round it to 1,075,000.
Okay, hang on a moment.
Because if you do a base, if you do a being connected base, not a base rate,
Yeah,
of, right now we're at
okay.
4719
Yeah.
is the,
That's our base residential metered rate per quarter.
and that gets you 13.5 free.
Which functionally is,
Oh, damn, okay, that's what I want. That's
Which
what
is-
it's not changing.
35 hundredths of a penny. And that is not all that different. That is not even quite as much as we're currently charging, assuming no system losses. We're charging 46 hundredths of a penny. We should be charging 46 hundredths of a penny, assuming no system losses. We're currently charging 35 hundredths of a penny. And with the water losses and the capital fund, we should be charging 62 hundredths of a penny. So that's almost a 100% increase.
So our base rate right now is only bringing in $40,000 a quarter.
Across all the metered and unmetered.
No, so the base rate on the metered.
Okay.
So the unmetered,
It was 80-90, right?
But the
Wait a
metered
minute,
people
wait a
are
minute.
paying for their actual usage over and above that 47.
right,
If they're using.
Okay.
if they're using.
Where are you getting that figure? Because industrial water base
But that,
is bringing in 43,000. They brought in,
That was residential. That was not industrial. I did not do the industrial at that point. It was strictly residential. Industrial is bringing in,
okay, residential is, yeah, right, it's about 40.
because the industrial base is,
I have the industrial bases as 43.
so is the industrial, it's 139, 33, alright. So the residential base was bringing in 41 and the industrial is, what did I say it was, 139, 33?
No. Okay. Water meter base rate for residential is bringing in 55.
Well, not according to the meter count.
This is the meter count, 858 meters.
Well, he might be looking at 24. You're looking at
I've got it.
25.
at 861, you've got the 3,
Water usage.
so you got 858 plus another 3 under the NWMB.
NWNB, yes, yeah. So you're still looking at 55,660 or
Right.
something.
And if you times the base rate of 4719 times that number, the 861, so 4719. So equals.
Yeah, but you're forgetting the base rate goes up if they use over the gallons.
No, that's usage.
That's
a
usage.
different raw.
This is a, yeah,
No, the base rate goes up too. That's what I'm trying to tell you. The base rate goes up. The base rate follows, so if you do the division
Of,
what the base rate is anybody who's below 13.5 is gonna show up at below 13.5. Anybody over 13.5 is gonna show up over 13.5. I think Pam, you had that at one point.
So then you got the
So you've got the
280s.
two go up in tandem. What you look at the dollar figures that are coming in, your base rate here for 858 meters brought in $55,637.85. That's where when I divided that, that's where I learned that more than half of those are below the minimum, the 13.5 minimum, because of the way that flowing the increase.
So
I wish I had a water bill with me.
wait, so I'm confused. So let's back it up. If you divide that 55,000 by the number of accounts, I see $64.85 per account, which is almost $20 more than the base rate, meaning that a lot of people are paying more than the base rate, and then they're paying usage rate. So this is why our rate structure sucks,
Yeah.
because you cannot break it down.
no,
I broke it down.
But you can't be sure, because you don't, without
Right.
knowing exactly how much everybody's using,
Yeah.
you can't be
The
sure.
problem is I know the rates, so I know I'm doing it right. That's
Okay.
the joke. Okay, so here is her base rate, which is going up to 96. This is her base rate, which is at
and she,
898.
but she only used.
Yeah, you're under usage on here, so it's not gonna
Oh.
work out right,
That,
yeah,
that's sewer. Hang on.
yeah. But she is under usage for both. But both are going up, so if you take that base rate and her number, what is it, 9867. 9867 times, what is our current?
We need a
base rate?
profligate water user to help us. You're no help to us at all.
Okay, this is,
42.
yeah, I gotta check the bill
Looking
date.
at my
Okay,
bills.
242.
Yeah, I've been paying no attention.
Well, I had to go back and dig them
Sorry.
out.
No, that's
So,
right.
yeah,
When did
I
my
just
meter
forgot
change?
the
How did the rates
decimal.
change?
Right.
So it's 98.67, right? No, it's not 9867 times, give me the rate again, to what?
the base is supposed to bring us all
242.
equality, we're all paying for the same.
Okay,
Yeah.
so
water,
she
and
is
then a bucket
paying
above is where it should be the
$23
difference.
over the base rate.
But why?
It's, the base rate follows, that is the problem, the base rate isn't a base rate.
No, it's not. It's a fluctuating rate.
It's a flat fee to be
What-
connected to the system.
plus
Okay.
plus $3.14 per 1,000 gallons up until 13,005, and then it's another $2.40 something per 1,000 gallons.
No, what it is everybody is paying the exact same price per gallon over 13.5. The only people are paying less per gallon for water are non-existent. Somebody like Pam and Ann are paying more per gallon because they are under the base rate. This is the quirk of it. They are paying less money, but they're
Sure,
paying
because
more
they're
per
not
gallon.
using their flat allocation.
Their flat
And
allocation.
that's you know,
But the allocation for everybody, it goes up. So if you use, whatever it is, 20,000 gallons, you're going to be charged the $2.42 per gallon. and the other rate for every single gallon you use.
Per 1,000 gallons.
Per 1,000
plus
gallons,
the
yeah.
rate in addition to.
Yeah, so literally what your rate is over 13.5 is the combination of the variable rate and the base rate.
Okay, so I really think we need to propose a simplified structure here. So like, I think we need to come to an agreement as to what's a fair base rate up to 13,500 gallons. And then, above that, there will be a surcharge variable rate. Because like, we know how much, we know how many hookups there are. If we allocate 13,500 gallons to each one of those hookups, and we understand how much it costs to produce that 13,500 times 1,800 hookups, that gets us to how we should set our base rate. If there's usage in excess of the 13,500 gallons, we should apply that regardless of whether they're metered or unmetered. If we can meter them, then we can come up with a ballpark of how to charge per 1,000 gallons. If we unmeter them, then we assume they're using a flat fee
Of 150 gallons.
or 200
Okay,
or whatever it
you're
is.
you're gonna sue the city doing that.
How?
Because nobody's going to want a meter. If you do that, then you have got to mandate and put in meters
Of course,
ASAP.
that's the
Well,
next
that's
step.
the goal.
That's
So we're,
That's
and
the
where
goal,
we
but we
screwed
aren't
up,
there
and
yet.
this is not going to blame anybody, but where we screwed up is that we should not have been covering the cost of installing meters from the outset.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
We should have been charging the fucking landowner from the start, because it would have cost me $150 to get your guys out there and install it, but somebody with a problematic hookup might cost them $3,000. You know, and that's not something that the city should be paying for.
Yeah.
It's an unfair reality, but we
The
got
council-
ourselves into this
The council
hole.
did that to themselves.
And so I don't even know if it's really something like, could you even go back in time and say like, oh, Jason spent an hour and a half at the Hurley residence, let's send them a bill for that time and materials. Like, you can't probably recreate that.
No,
No.
they voted to have us put them in.
Exactly. So I don't really know.
Wasn't there like the first 100 were gonna be free and then
And-
over that there was supposed to be a charge?
And then they lost the paperwork on it. And I stood up at a council meeting and said, if I'd known that, you know, I could have done this, I would have bought meters for a lot of people because I made so much money on metering my own house. Yeah, it was just,
Okay,
yeah,
so-
and then they started giving away all of the
The answer
meters.
to the question you raised, which is legitimate, is it doesn't matter whether we've incentivized not having a meter, because we are going to figure out a plan this summer that's going to get everybody installed with a meter over the next year to year and a half. We've got to do that. Now, I'm not saying it's going to get done by our crew.
Right.
In fact, I suspect it won't. But one way or another, that's phase 2, 3, whatever it is that follows this initial decision.
Honestly, I think it's great to aim that, but I think you ought to have it where the meters are coming in. I mean, finding the people, you can barely find a plumber when you need one around here. It's gonna be a bitch to get that done, and we're gonna shoot the city in its foot before that.
And
Yeah.
last time, they gave them till, I don't know, 7 years out to be metered, and there was no penalty attached to it.
That-
So the
Well,
rule,
that's the trick, right?
was,
This is not just an open-ended, we hope everybody will do this in a year
No,
and a half.
there's got to be a disincentive for delay.
There's got to be a carrot and a stick.
And that is what we built into the rates, was an incentive to have people metered, because enough people would be under the rate, because we did set it low, but not as low as people wanted it to be. You know, so this is the whole thing, and then the city just did not follow through on it.
it would be worth it, I think, to find out how other cities managed to get everybody metered, because there's no, it may be by the time we get through, there may be no incentive to go from unmetered to metered, number one. And number two, what can you do if someone says, I don't want to be metered?
Double the cost.
Unfortunately, you double the chances to shut off their water, you know, like.
Our goal is to become a metered city, and that's going to be the goal. You're gonna live in a city, you're gonna be living in a metered city.
But how are we going to afford, with everything else we can't afford to put in the meters?
If it's a $3,000 hookup for one house. You're
Yeah.
not gonna reclaim that money for 30 years.
So it's
you
one
know?
of these things, you've got to figure out how to go on that. And in my mind, I think Rick has a great plan. Let's see if we can stop, the bleeding now. I think the best to stop the bleeding is to come up and cover what we think the usage is, cover what is the production that is whichever end you're going for. And then go back and build everything. I mean, we have to change the ordinance. We have to, do mandates. This is not quick. You're talking a year and a half before you probably even get the funding to put in meters.
I think that's a good estimate.
And go ahead, shoot yourself in the foot. But I think it's really stupid. I think you can get more people if it comes out how many people, and I went through all of those meters before. I have spreadsheets of every single meter and their usage over 4 quarters from 2016. So we have some of that information. Now we have more meters. At some point we can pull it together, but I think you'll find most people being under 13.5. And I think what we have to do is just keep that as an incentive and just get people metered.
I also think that there's hidden benefits in the expense of metering, because the metering will tell us what transmission losses we're
And I think it's considerable.
That's
I
not the
disagree
money
with you.
spent
Yeah.
on very expensive flow meters in the system, in the delivery system. That's a kickback for metering people. So
Well, I didn't say that spreadsheet. I was just doing an
Yeah.
average.
Yeah.
Just
Yeah.
averages, you know.
And I think
based
we
on
can
the
throw it,
averages, it looks tighter than I would have assumed.
Yeah. And
So-
we can throw it out, we can throw the average, for meter, either residential or
Right.
commercial, out the window because of some of the, big users compared to everything
Right,
else.
right. So I'm leaning towards one, stop calling it a base rate. It's not a base rate.
Yeah, it's not.
It's a connection fee, or it's a
It's a minimum connection fee is what it is.
Annual.
no. It is the connection fee. Period. It's the connection fee. It's not the minimum. It's the connection fee.
Once you're connected, that's it, it's over.
So
It's
why
every year.
can't we?
Oh, it's every, all right.
Here's a theory, and I haven't done the math, but why can't we say this is your connection fee? If you're metered, you've got your connection fee plus this much for every 1,000 gallons you use. Period. If you're unmetered, you have your connection fee, and we're going to have to assume that you're using
Whatever.
the standard average of 150 gallons a day, and that's what you're going to pay for.
I like everything you said, except for the fact that there's no incentive for getting metered in that.
No
Have you
incentive
done the
for
math on
heavy users.
13.5 though? Plus,
Well, didn't
plus
you
whatever
just say you're
the-
getting the same base fee plus the same assumed daily usage rate,
Well, no.
what you're paying for 150 gallons a day?
which is the same usage rate, right? Oh, that's
No.
in excess of.
It's in
Oh,
excess.
in excess. Okay.
So in
Yeah.
other words, there's no, the metered people pay the connection fee plus actual usage.
Correct.
And those are the only two categories.
Yep.
And then the unmetered people pay the base fee plus deemed usage of
Yep.
X gallons per
Right.
quarter.
Assumed usage.
Right.
And then for,
Which is how a lot of these towns do it.
That's how it.
and then for industrial, you have a higher connection fee.
Mhm.
Your first, I don't know, your first
So some,
20,000 gallons.
so, yeah, so some towns use
You could have different tiers. So if you're
some of it's
industrial,
4,000, 8,000, and 11,000,
Right.
37,000, and then
Right.
37 to 180,000. So
Right.
there's brackets. I don't
Right.
even know. Like, what's your biggest user? How many gallons per quarter are they using? Do you know? What's the prison using per quarter?
It's not the prison,
It's
it
not
has,
the
it's,
Hospitals.
yeah, and it's
Hospitals.
3 million.
And it's $1 million
3 million.
per quarter.
Yes.
Oh shit!
That's what I'm saying, you're off by 5 million with your top users. That's what I
Well,
started
I
saying.
mean, it's, the data that's out there is all the data that's out there.
So once,
And then they drop down considerably. This is why I said
Right.
that's off. Most of your commercial users are going to be offices.
so your
Sure.
commercial users up to, we could do a,
We're gonna have commercial users that use, you
Right.
know, all the office buildings on East Main Street, for instance, most of them probably aren't using 50 gallons a day. They're flushing the toilet a few times and
Right.
making a pot of coffee.
you're gonna pay your base connection fee. If you use 2,000 and under, you're gonna pay this. If you use up to 6,000 and under, these are just arbitrary numbers.
Yeah.
Just to, you're gonna pay this rate. If you use up to 10,000 gallons, you're going to pay this rate because you're putting more stress on the system.
Yep.
There's a rate applied to each over.
Right.
So for comparison, Manchester, which was one of those towns that was similar in population to Newport City, they have their quarterly fee of $54.41. That's $5 more per hookup than we charge. Their metered rate for the so that base charge of $54 includes up to 4,000 gallons per quarter. From 4,000 to 8,000 gallons, it's $3.75 per thou. And then from there, from the next 12,000 gallons, the next 12,000 gallons, the next 20,000 gallons, sorry, so 4 to 8, and the next 20,000 gallons, you get charged $4.60 per thou. So, and then they've got these brackets from there on where it continues to increase. Like, I find that to be the most simple
Absolutely.
approach. However, it means reinventing our entire
That's,
allocation and budget and billing system. I don't know how much work that is.
Quite a bit.
Well, the good news is we got a couple of months to figure that out.
yeah, we kinda knew we were.
We're doing
gonna-
this now for
For July.
a bill that's not gonna go out till midsummer.
Okay. So, I mean, I really like Manchester's system.
But how are you going to be able to figure out how much income you're gonna take? That's the problem.
Would there no?
Well, we can project, we know how many hookups there are, so that's base fee times number of hookups.
Yeah.
We know how many meters there are, we can assume that those folks aren't using.
And we know what the meter people are using
We
per
know how many
quarter.
people are using per quarter, so that's per $1,000 times that rate.
Yeah.
And then the difference is the unmetered
And then-
plus the exorbitant users.
Yeah.
And then that's where we back calculate to figure out what do we charge those exorbitant and unmetered users. That's how I see it makes sense. But it's a completely different
Yeah.
system than what we're
Yeah.
working with right now.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, and my feeling is if we're gonna have to do something by Sunday night for
Yeah.
a presentation,
Yeah.
I don't think we can make it with any reasonable,
Not
understanding.
that type of a system, no.
I think the thing to do, literally the stopgap, and as John said, we can raise the rates every single time. Raise the rates right now based on the existing system and get it so we'll cover what our costs are.
But how do you do that, Jennifer, and address the inequity in the
Right.
metered versus unmetered?
There's not really inequity if you go back to the same thing. If you're using 13,500 gallons, you are paying the exact same price as the residential non-metered.
The metered and unmetered are paying the same thing if they use that amount.
Yeah.
Right.
So the inequity only comes in what they did with the last increase where they decided that residential non-metered sewer was gonna go up by 20% compared to the 7% or whatever it
It's
was.
28 versus 7, right?
Yes, and that has to be corrected. And my feeling is, and I went and backed out the 28%, got it down to 7%, floated into what was charged. And my feeling is then we sit there and we've got a base rate and we do a percentage across the board.
So that's on the sewer side though.
That's sewer and water. Water is just a straight across. And I think, I threw a number in here. There's some things that are missing in my spreadsheet. But I ended up with putting in a 20% increase in water And there are a few things that are not in here, which are the strange things. It ended up coming up with $981,000, so just short of 1 million.
So what is an unmetered account getting charged right now?
Right now, the unmetered account is getting, where the hell is it here? Non-residential, okay. Hang on, oh, it's not there. Where's my rate sheet? For water, they are getting, $80.90 for water and the,
So 80-90.
yeah,
It's a
and they,
non-metered residential quarterly charge.
yeah,
For water, 89, yeah,
For water.
that's the category I'm in, because I have water only.
yeah. So, and that is if you take the 47 and do it times the base rate, or just take 80/90 and divide it by 13.5, and my calculator
So-
misfunctioned or my hands did.
Unmetered water right now is getting charged $6 a thousand.
Yeah, and you have,
So they're already paying,
and your meters, they are paying $5.96 a thousand.
oh, because you gotta divide that connection. So unmetered is not getting charged that $47.19?
No,
Or isn't
There-
the 4719 built into the 80/90? I thought
The-
that's what it said.
the 80/90 is the 4719 plus the usage and the
At
base rate.
13.5.
At 13.5. It
That's
was
what I
come
thought.
up with by, it was 13.5 times whatever the rates were.
Yeah.
They did the base and the variable to try to incentivize people into doing it, and also at that point, it was the big thing to do. The base rate was supposed to be your fixed cost, your, debt service. The variable was the ones that would go up and down.
Yeah.
So they ended up doing that, but basically it was the equality, and that's what I'm saying. If you're using 13.5, whether you have a meter or if you're unmetered, you're paying the exact same price for your meter, or for your water, for the water.
Back to-
So you can back out. I can back out and tell you that $15,000 in the residential, I think residential water, I think it was something like $12,000 was the part that was not the base rate of the 55,000. You know, there are ways of doing it, and I have a error in my spreadsheet, unfortunately, here. But literally, you could raise this up probably 25% on water, and you could cover everything.
Were you the one that said we were the lowest in the state for our rates?
No. I
We're-
mean, that's kind of like an impossibility to state.
It's not even really, by the time you're done, what I learned from your spreadsheet is it's very hard to actually come up with that calculation.
Variables are very
Yeah.
hard. Yeah.
You can't.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I
I
think-
just know that generally speaking for towns around here, based on what I've seen in real estate closings, Newport's rates in general are considerably less painful than, say, Barton Village and some of the other smaller communities, where it's not unusual to hit $100 a month just for water.
Okay, we can get just over 1 million if we increase the rate by 28% for water.
For water,
Yeah.
and that's based on what?
That's based on a spreadsheet that I built that I believe in, but I can't explain. And I'm the lowest person at the table right now. I have been for a while. I watched, I think Patrick was struggling on this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But that's
I mean-
based on
That's based on what we use.
Basically what they're billing now?
What they're billing now.
Which I think we're kind of stuck using
We
these
are.
numbers
Yeah.
because we can't just come up with our own
Yeah.
structure
I mean,
without.
I have to fill in the blanks here because I didn't put in seasonal, that type of thing.
But those are such
Almost-
drops in a bucket.
Yeah,
I mean, like,
they
really don't
certainly-
account
and-
for
and
anything.
those-
Swimming pools
28.
are like
And
negligible.
the
Yeah.
other was 25?
It's annoying to even
For
have
We
that
haven't done
fucking
sewer
docket.
yet. That was water, 28 on the water.
Yeah.
So that,
28% both on the base rate and the.
Straight across the board.
right,
everything.
and have to be,
On everything, including our quirks. And we got a quirk where somebody is, a non-residential sewer is paying less than our residential people are. Yeah, it's weird,
And if
these-
you wanted it to be a little bit higher because of the loan, and you wanted it to be up around
And the 28% includes that.
1.1 million, how much would the rate increase have to be?
That was gonna be my next
Oh, it's
question.
30.
You were talking both sewer and water, Jennifer?
No, this is
No.
just
Water
one,
block.
I
yeah.
think sewer is,
Sewer's more out of whack.
Yeah.
I thought the water was more.
No, it's not.
Now, the sewer needs to go up higher than the water.
Okay, just go away, guys.
I agree with Jennifer, because the last time we had the committee, we jumped around different numbers, used, the 150 gallons, we used 200 gallons. And if we go completely changing everything, you're gonna find there's gonna be entities out there that are gonna really get whacked hard. And that's not gonna
Quickly.
go over very
Very
well.
quickly.
And
Very
the
quickly.
advantage of the rates we had was that it shifted from the residential to the commercial. It hit our top 4 users like mad. I mean, literally, they had one where they were paying $75 per meter, and they ended up paying $10,000 the first time it happened. 2 of those guys, the hospital and Columbia Forest Products, both were on the committee. But it's one of these things. There are all of these quirks. There are more quirks. You want to know the meter size, the pipe size. It's in the spreadsheets downstairs. They have it. You can tell what the the size is.
we're gonna need to get
Anyway,
a copy of that.
That's good data right there, yeah.
Answer, and if we went to 138%, that is 1,083,000. And I think we'd pick up the other 20 in some of the things we don't have.
You just switched to sewer though. You're talking sewer now?
No, this is water. This is all water.
Okay.
So
The sewer's below.
when you increase from 1 million to about 1.1 million, that's about a 10% increase.
Yeah.
You're telling me you don't increase the 28% by 10%, which would be another 2.8, which would only bring you up to 31,
31 or 32.
31%?
I can run that. I just took Patrick's ballpark figure. So we wanted 31. Okay. And I am a little slow with my hand.
While you're doing this, I do agree that we can't really reinvent this rate schedule until every single you hook up with meter.
Well, I don't think we can reinvent the rate schedule until there's somebody downstairs that can do
Navigate
it.
the system. But also, I don't think it's fair until we have everything metered because it's built on these major underlying assumptions, and it's just
It's nothing but assumptions.
Yeah, that have no basis in.
There's no
becoming
basis on
rational.
anything.
Right, yeah.
I mean, this
it's
is.
rational, but it's not really defensible.
Yeah.
Right.
You know, It's
Exactly.
And at least people are used to it. This way, it's a rational increase that we can
Yeah, and
end
it's-
up
it's
doing,
flat
and then
Everybody
see
understands
where
what
we
we're
go.
doing.
Yeah, I think that's the no-brainer.
And, I mean, as long as there's not an uproar about the fact that there's probably 2 or 3 ghost users that are exorbitant consumers of water that are still flying under the radar, and that burden is being spread across 1,794 other users, then, you know,
And-
it's the
but it's-
ugly truth of it, but.
And at least on the commercial side, it's fair to say that all of the large users are metered. So it's going to be a few.
Yeah, there's
outliers.
only
There,
what,
seven
there,
residents?
there's 17 and they're hairdressers and things like that. I mean, they're
Very small.
absolutely minor. You know, somewhere
But-
on that sheet.
Yeah,
Yeah, so it's one of those things.
I mean, they're not, yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
they're
Okay.
minor compared to our big ones, but
Yeah.
they're not minor compared to a resident.
Yeah. I mean, we do
Especially
have, the
hairdresser.
marina is one of them,
Yeah.
okay, just to let you know.
Which marina?
Um,
The gate, the
Oh, no,
city dock, or the
sorry,
marina
that's
marina?
no, it's, A is active, so no, they used to be and now they're off of it. So that's what you have to read, I suddenly realized, there's some of these where you have to see terminated is terminated.
Yeah,
I is inactive, A is active.
well, the
There-
large marina doesn't use much water at all in the
Yeah.
winter, if any, but in the summer, it all depends on,
Yeah.
how many people.
And I don't know where the meter is. You know, these are all done, yeah, okay, Jimmy Quick is, now they've gone from active to inactive, so they just changed. So, these are all inactive in there.
Jennifer, can I get you back to the question?
Oh,
How do you
yeah,
get to
yeah,
1.1
Yeah,
million?
1.31, sorry, 31% increase nets, 1,028,000.
1,028,000?
Yeah.
That's not
We need to
even,
go higher.
We need to go to
One-
1.1.
so you gotta go higher.
Yeah,
Yeah, that's
So,
why I was
thirty-
below 1.1 when
Right.
I was at the other. I think we need to go to maybe, I think this is where I got the 40% was on this one and not the other.
And that'll
Um,
make, that number makes sense now.
Trying to be blunt.
Go ahead, Lori, sorry.
So just one question on this, and then I have a couple other later. Is that, are we talking about, you know, let's just use the figure 30% across the board? So what does that do to the non-metered people who went up 20% already last year
I
and?
mean,
and-
everybody's going up equivalent,
Mm-hmm.
metered and
Across the
unmetered.
board.
No, I know it, but just a year ago or
Right.
8 months ago,
so
everybody went up like, I mean,
the
we went up
unmetered
like
sewer
this.
are gonna be pissed because their rate is gonna go up substantially.
The non-metered?
They're already at $200.
Yeah,
Mhm.
yes,
40%.
that's what I'm
40%
asking.
to get up to
Hold on, let's do this one at a time.
Yeah,
Lori,
See, that's
finish.
why I'm asking, because we got non-metered people out there paying $240 a quarter. They're
Right.
already screaming because there was such a large jump this last time, and we're gonna do it again. We're gonna ask them to pay another 30 or 35% on top of the 20% that was already, or 28% or whatever. That is,
Yeah, so
in my
if we
opinion,
can just
that's.
track with that for a moment. I don't disagree. And the one way to resolve that is to go back and do the percentage increase based on the rates before we raised them in November, whatever it was, October.
Well, okay.
then that's going to require
Okay.
figuring out what the revenue was.
We can use
Yeah,
it,
we've got it, yeah.
we can
Right.
adjust for the weirdness in the sewer, it's just gonna take a little bit longer. Because that's the only thing. If you figure that you've already voted that rate increase, my feeling is let's use the figures for the February billing and just flow what happens when we increase on that. The only change we do is go back and do the increase on the residential sewer, non-metered, and just back it lower. So it's not going to be whatever,
A dramatic.
40%.
So
Yeah.
because it's the
I
sewer
got it.
where that quirk is, let's just try to focus on water. and
Yeah,
get that
so
pinned
right
down before we
now
jump.
with water, 40% increase across the board
Get us.
get us that 1.1 million.
Yep.
And Paul, can you repeat for me one more time? This 1.1 million is basically your number, having moved all of the meters out of sewer and into water,
And adding,
and adding $100,000 as a wild ass guess for debt service.
Well, about
Yes.
120
And a
or so.
15% capital improvement.
so
Fund.
that adds,
Or it could be capital improvement.
So, no,
because
so
That service isn't gonna kick in.
if we add,
Or it might.
if we do the 15% capital reserve,
Yep.
plus, wasn't it 70,000?
We've been throwing around the number 100,000, I think. but-
Okay, so if it's it would be you would need 1.216.
1.216.
Yes.
Alright.
That's the 15% capital reserve fund on top of the water budget with the meters moved out of sewer.
That's the number I've been guessing the whole money.
And
Probably gonna be 53%.
100,000 for debt service for the water tank.
So how does the 1.216 compare to Jennifer's 40%?
She is working on
It's
that
pretty
right
close.
Yeah, well, what do we wanna get to?
now. 1.2.
Just throw 50 in there for now. See what
Yeah.
happens.
Yeah, just throw 50% in there.
I
see
wrote
what
down
happens.
a long time ago 53%. I wrote it early at the beginning of the meeting, just to see if that's
Oh,
what we're gonna come up with.
are you, do you play the slots or something? The lottery tickets?
We're all
50 is a
on
nice
the-
even number. I don't know.
Yeah, let's try.
I do want to
50,
set. I
50.
do want. Go ahead. Go ahead.
Oh, okay, 50 will get us a 1.177.
Which is pretty darn
What
close.
would 53 do?
I want us. And what is,
What
and
would
Jennifer,
53 do?
Jennifer, what does that get us
Oh,
for
we're gonna
base
go
rate
back.
and metered variable rate?
I can do that. Hang on.
Okay, it is gonna be, the base is $5.31,
It's variable.
and the,
Isn't that variable?
no, I think it's
Or
base.
is that per thousand?
Yeah, it's per thousand,
okay.
and then $3.63 for the, use.
So
Yeah.
you said 561 and three
Yeah,
what?
363,
363.
so $9.
That times 13.5. So that tells me that we're talking about a $76 base quarterly fee per all users and a $49 okay, and $3.63 per thousand in excess of 13,500.
At what percentage were you asking about?
That was a 50% increase, right?
50%?
We needed a little bit more than the 50 though.
Well, I just wanted to compare this. So like $75 base fee puts us in the realm of like the town of Randolph under the town of Manchester. That's for metered people for water. And we haven't even gotten to sewer, but you know, like Bristol, for instance, charges everybody $260 per quarter for sewer base fee plus another $10 per 1,000 gallons. So like we're not really getting out of the realm of comparables with these increases. They're just going to be shocked to the status quo.
Oh, sorry, I
Don't
switched.
tell them it's Manchester.
So where are you at?
Huh?
For
Don't tell
rate?
them
I
it's Manchester
didn't-
because they'll tell you that people in Newport don't make enough money to.
Sure.
It'll make
I
you
mean,
think how
and
money
Bristol's
is people-
Bristol's Chittenden County, isn't it?
I'll just say, to Carl's point, if you look at the deficit that we've been running and how it got created
Oh, yeah.
year after year, it basically was because
Borrowing from the future.
we budgeted for 50%
1.2.
lower income than
And
we
that's at
needed
what percentage?
every year, and the number was between 45 and 55% year after year.
So it really
So
needs to
the
be
number
like
in my head that's been
54.
rolling around has been 45 to 50% increase was going to be necessary to get us out of this, and that was before we added in the $100,000 debt service.
I would say it's gonna be picked up with some of the
We're
things, the
catching up
seasonal
for
rate
having had level
in
funding
here.
for
Some of
7
these
years.
things
That's
are
right.
not, I'm not
That's right.
calculating the non-metered, water.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
All right, so if everybody has the rate sheet from October 24,
They're effective now, yeah.
what 53% does is it changes 47.19 to 48.72, 242 to 395, 354 to 507, 80.9 to 82.54, and then the two 139.33s to 140.86, and then the last one of 47.19 to 48.72. I think that's what you were asking.
Mm-hmm.
And that'll achieve your number, right?
Well,
Close,
what percentage were you up on to that?
53.
3.
So 4719 times 1.5 is what, more like 75
Oh,
or something?
whoops.
Yeah,
Whoops,
it's not.
sorry, my form, hang
Yeah.
on, hang on.
Yeah, it sounded like you were
Thank
doing
you.
0.05 instead of
And some
0.5.
of them don't agree with what I have, but I was not figuring out
Equals
what you were doing.
this times, let my fingers do the right thing now.
Yeah, because I just did the
Okay.
math based on my
Yeah. Control.
non-metered water only, and I'm coming
Okay.
up with about.
We're gonna get real big
$125
numbers
a
now.
quarter.
Control
Coming up
C,
with what,
Control
In
V.
round numbers, about 120 to 125 a quarter.
Yeah. So 7220, 3.7, 5.4, 123.7, 213.13, and 7220. Does that match yours?
Are you at 50 or 53?
53.
Okay, all right.
I wanted to make Carl happy.
Okay.
That's good because we're gonna put Carl's name on this. So.
Oh, you're gonna blame me for the
Carl
number,
King
right?
water and sewer rate increase.
The decision
So
is Carl's going to Maple
we've
Fields before 9
got,
o'clock.
we've got,
the lottery
base rate
ticket.
per
pay it all
thousand is 542.
Yep.
Okay, 370 for usage, okay. The non-residential, water is 213.
Yep.
Yeah, residential is 123.
Yep.
Okay.
And then the vacant land connections are 72
Yeah,
because
Yeah.
they might as well chip in.
yeah.
And then
Which is, the 72 is the same as the base rate. That's one of the things you'll see. The base rate and the vacant water rate
Same rate.
are
Yeah.
the same rate.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And one thing which we're not going to address tonight, but because I flipped the page and saw it, I'm going to bring up is what we're charging for water turnoffs and all that stuff is going to go up drastically because from what I'm seeing for salaries, that doesn't even begin to cover 15 minutes of guys' time out in the field. So,
With you. Phase 4, 7.
You know, I gotta say though, I was like looking at other towns, like nobody charges what it probably costs to do that. It's
Yeah.
crazy. They're all under $100. And I'm like, you can't
Because
get
it's the
anybody to
last-
show up for $100.
it's the
to do
last
anything.
thing they think about.
Sure, no, but and it was like kind of shocking. It was like, you know, I'm thinking about it's 2 o'clock in the morning in February, and your guy gets called to go shut off a meter because there's a blown water pipe in a frozen house, and they're gonna charge you $67. You know, like I'd be thrilled to get that bill, but like, goddamn, like that, you know. He's right. Like it doesn't really seem to cover the capital, but like how often does that happen, right? You know, yeah.
Okay, so I have
Now we got to go to sewer.
a process. Yeah, so 2 questions. One is, if we've got a plan for how we move forward with water, what does it mean about sewer? And then the second question is a process question, which is, we don't, the Monday night deadline is a little bit fictitious. We could, I've checked with the other 3 council members tonight while we were meeting, we could have our special council meeting on Wednesday night next week and buy ourselves another evening to work on this so that we could have our public forum on Sunday, get input, and then take Monday to really work on the final numbers and make sure we've got what we want before the council considers it.
Is there enough days out for that meeting, to call for that
To
meeting?
warn it? Yeah, because I haven't actually warned the special meeting yet.
So you're talking about moving our Monday the 28th meeting to Wednesday the 30th?
Yes, the special council meeting where we were going to consider the recommendation. If it's your judgment that we really need a couple more days to make sure we've got our ducks in a row, then
We're doing this sort of fast and dirty for the sake that we're going to learn to regret it.
Sure.
Right.
well, that's part of why I'm asking the
But
question.
I think we all are in agreement that this is a stopgap measure and something has to happen in the short term.
Right.
So
Sound like we flowed.
honestly, what you guys just spent the last 10 minutes doing is how I thought we should have done this from the start, is just start applying percent increases and
Yeah.
see where it gets us. And
Which is why I built this whole thing.
and I appreciate
Yeah,
that,
yeah.
and you're the best person to do it because you've done this twice already now, over
No,
Which translates
we're
into
not.
200 times.
over many years. But what I would say is like, you know, I think we should do this exact thing for the sewer, and I think we go to a public meeting and we float this, and like we can't really backtrack because it doesn't doesn't fix the problem.
Well, yeah, I mean,
But-
ultimately, we have to pay to run the system on a break-even basis, so the
Mhm.
fact that it's been going in the hole for 7 years needs to be
Yeah, we just don't have any choice.
I think
accounted
that's
for.
how you started.
It's not like we can shut the water off every Tuesday.
Yeah. Or start doing it by license plate last
Yeah,
digit.
like they did in
yeah.
Mexico City.
Yeah, very good.
Pam had a good idea earlier that everybody's allotted 2 showers a week or 1 shower a week and that's it.
Yeah.
Can we
I'm
store
sure
them up
that
and have a
Travis
really
would
big
love to be
shower?
a shower.
All right, so do we all have a little more time? Can we do the same thing with the
Real
sewer?
quick on the water debt service, I'm going to insert a line into this budget that I'm gonna email to everybody, and I'm just gonna call it new water tower debt service, and I will put in 100,000,
Yes.
so that
Is that per
when
year?
everybody's looking at this, they're looking at what we talked about, I'll highlight it so it stands out.
Or
Is
you
it-
could put in parentheses to that estimated, because when you come back again,
It's gonna be different.
it may be larger.
Or smaller.
And is that per year
Yes.
Yeah.
for?
We're just
two
making a
years?
wild guess that it's gonna be
Spread
$100,000
between
in debt
whatever
service.
the
We're
final
taking
cost
3
is
million and
minus
spreading
all the
it
grants.
over 30 years, I guess. 3 million over 30
I
years.
don't think we
would
should
be
spread it over
100,000
30 years, because
plus-
they've
plus
done that in the
interest.
past, they've done that in the past, and, especially with the water tower, you're gonna be dumping
More maintenance money.
more
into it.
maintenance money in it before that
But we're just
time.
talking about paying off the building of it.
I get that.
Well, if we
Right.
did it over 20 years, it'd be $150,000 a year before you, if it's 3 million, before you figure in interest.
Right.
That's right.
I mean,
Well, if we actually have a capital reserve fund, presumably some of that could go towards water tower significant maintenance.
No, well,
I don't know, can it? 'Cause-
Well, if it's not annual maintenance type of thing, but capital, if there's a 10 or 15-year item as opposed to a,
Annual.
one-year item, that's something to look at anyway.
I'm looking for a mortgage calculator.
Can I just add 2 things real quick, and this is kind of future, but, so when you start talking about the water meters and making them mandatory, I think, I don't know what the discussion is about, having people pay for the connections, but I think at some point you have to decide if the first 800
Hold on, Jennifer, hold on just a second. Go ahead, Lori, make your point.
If you've not charged the first 800 people who've gotten, or 1,100 people who've gotten water meters, then you have to come up with a fee, or you have to come up with a way to say, this is how much you're gonna get, how much the city's gonna pay for that installation, but if you have a problem over that amount, you're gonna have to pay for it. Does that make sense? Because you can't give out 1,100 water meters and then say to the other 700, sorry, you're gonna have to pay for yours. That's-
Particularly, you've already charged them. They've paid $25,000 to
A
each
year.
of the accounts a year.
A year.
For several years, they
Yeah.
have.
And the money's not there. So that's just one thing. The other thing, and this is so you guys are aware, I did tell Rick this, but I had a conversation with a lady from, oh wait.
Go ahead.
I had a conversation with a lady from CoBank, which is an agricultural credit bank in Colorado. Through their farm credit leasing program, they have a water meter leasing program. It is a 10-year program. I do not know what the interest rates are on it, probably pretty low. The way it works is we would decide what meters to use. We would select a company to put them in, installation fees, everything, and it's bundled into what is called a leasing program for 10 years. At the end of the lease, it's like $1 and everything becomes ours. So it's a way to finance the water meter program. And she shared with me, because she's been doing this for a number of years, we are not alone. And we will not get money from anybody for anything if we don't have everybody metered. And that is like across the board for any kind of.
So I just want to say yes to all of that,
Yes.
and it's phase 2 or 3 or 4.
That's right. I'm
It's
just
not- it's
putting,
not salient tonight,
Yeah.
but it's important.
Right, I'm just putting that out there, so.
But I think we've really got to lock in on what we're going to do here in the next.
Absolutely.
Okay. What was it, we raised the rates in November, and what was the time we raised them before?
They were also raised just as I came onto council a year ago.
Right.
And I think
So
it
is-
was the same,
So was that April?
'Cause that's how-
effective
so-
in May?
the way that we got to the rate increase in the fall was no one would give me a number on how we should go about this. And so I said, well, what was it the last time? And then I put a motion on the table that said, do what we did the last time, just stop not doing anything. And so I think you'd have to go back a year to find out kind of what they were before we started doing that kind of inequitable.
I think the
Distribution.
last one was the only inequitable, but you need to.
Well, they
Yeah,
weren't-
it was, but
hadn't been raised at all before that.
Between May of
Right.
'24
Nothing had been
and
raised before
November?
that.
We only raised it twice last year, May and November?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay, all right, that's what I needed, because I thought I had lost something here. Okay, so,
So in
They were
October,
raised
they
in
went up to
October.
26%.
so it was it was 7% that we went up,
8%
everything else.
for metered and 26% for non-metered. I don't know, Ed Barber wrote this article.
No, it was 28, Rick? It was 28% for non-metered, what was it for metered? 6,
It was
7?
more like 6 or 7. I don't
I
remember.
just told you, it's 8% for metered and 26%
There
for
it is.
non-metered
Okay,
property.
Thank you.
all right, okay, there's 8, trust Ed. Okay. All right, let's see if that works out. Yeah, okay.
And in
So-
2022, it was an increase from 3% impact on a quarterly bill for non-meter resident. Meter residents would be a 3% impact on the base rate. So it sounds like in 2022, they increased it 3%. And here's the rate sheet with the changes on it.
So, just so y'all know, if we borrow $3 million over 20 years at 2.5% interest, which is, I suspect, somewhere in the ballpark if we go through the bond bank, we're looking at $190,000 a year in payments.
Double what we
Almost.
suggested, unless we go for 30 years, which I don't even know is possible.
Yeah, and I mean, I think Tom's point is well taken, which is that at the end of 20 years, we'll be looking at how we maintain the next major thing that's going on here.
Okay.
So add another $100,000 to the
1.6.
estimate.
That's what I think.
It's the problem they did, that there was, I think we just paid it off, they had one that was 40 years,
Yeah,
and
no one can even remember it.
no, and they're still paying on it and updating some of the infrastructure that we're still paying on.
Yeah.
Those bitches of long-term loans, right?
Just for instance, the water tower on the west side was put in early 70s, mid 70s. And when we stripped it and painted it, it cost us, oh my God, 3 times more than what it was originally cost to put it in. Of course, it had lead paint, that's one of the reasons it cost that much.
There would be that, right?
But that's why
But
it's
that's
still
just-
held up so well. God damn it. Okay, so does that mean that we have to change our
Yep.
100,000 to 195 and figure out what the percent increase needs to be for that?
You want me to change it to 195?
I mean,
Yeah.
based on that, I mean, 2.5% sounds like a deal. I don't know, are we really gonna get that low of a rate?
I suspect, if we went through the municipal bond bank.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, municipal rates, generally speaking, are lower than commercial rates
Okay.
because the recipient, the income to the recipient is tax-free, the interest income.
That's good to know.
I was also thinking of a technique that my father, I grew up relatively poor and we were always in debt. And we would consolidate loans every now and then. So I was curious about whether or not there's an old loan in the water section, and this would be the new loan, and whether or not the rate on that loan, and the administrative fee is really high on that loan, whether or not you might be able to consolidate 2 loans and get a better rate. And
Maybe, but I will say that, I mean, we don't have a lot of money out in the municipal bond bank at the moment, as far as I can
You
tell.
can't pay off a bond
With the bond.
sooner, though, can you?
I don't know, I'm just
When you go to
asking.
the bond bank, you can't, let's say you took it out for 30 years and you wanted to pay it off in 20, aren't you stuck
Short
to that
answer
30?
is, financial heads will have to prevail. I don't,
I know what you're saying, that they want that
Yeah,
to
they,
satisfy the whole loan because they make money on it.
right,
Some prohibit prepayment and some don't.
right.
Some prohibit prepayment for a limited, say, a third of the term. First 10 years in on a 30, and then after that, you can pay ahead. It's all over the place, depending on the program and the lender.
Okay, so it sounds like we just assume it's a 20-year, 2.5%.
Yeah.
Jesus.
Well, that doesn't sound good.
No, I just saw the increase in the non-residential sewer. You know, the fact that it's going up, well, like, I have a 75% increase, it just sort of shines out.
I'll bet.
Yeah, it does. What do we want in sewer, by the way? I got 2 million
Okay,
here.
so before we get to sewer, it sounds like we need to make one more adjustment on the water.
Yeah, I'm working on that right now.
Yeah.
One more adjustment on the water,
Yeah.
on what?
Well, because of the math that Rick just did in terms
Right.
of a likely payment on a bond.
Oh, yeah. So we want more than 1.2 million?
Yeah.
Throwing another 95,000 on it.
I have a feeling we're gonna see a lot of for sale signs. Not that anywhere might be better on this.
You know, I get the concern, Jennifer, and
You know, the flip side is that people had a deal for 7 years.
Yeah, I know, this is one of the things, and a deal
on the pen
before
pipe.
that. So.
and I know plenty of very low income people for whom this is going to be untenable,
Yeah,
and they are much on my mind.
Why? is my
And you know,
formula
I also
not
know
working?
that, I mean, my bill I think last time was $270, water and sewer combined for the quarter.
270 or
270. It was I think I can't remember exactly, but I think it was about that 250, 270.
You have
So-
a meter?
Run that out to, you know, add a 55% increase on the whole thing, and now you're up to like would it be $415, $420 a month, a quarter. Divide that by 3. We're really talking about $120 to $130 per month
per person?
per household.
Oh.
Right, per household, which is about what people spend nowadays on cable and internet, or a lot more, right? So I'm just saying, you're getting clean water and all your waste is getting taken away.
And you're not
Okay, I
having to
get
run the
one
risk of
point
replacing
three,
a $40,000
that's
septic
Unfortunately,
system.
there are people that don't know how to budget.
If,
Don't do that.
I get it.
That's the hard part, and you can't convince them
I
otherwise.
hopefully I'm
Same
gonna
thing
have an
with the
answer for you
taxes.
real quick here. My formula.
To be honest with you, I
blew up
don't
on me
know
for
if
some
the
reason.
people who are gonna be super concerned about them being able to pay these increases are gonna be the
Does
ones that
that-
show up on
Why
Sunday.
is
You
my
know,
formula?
they're not gonna know about it until it shows up on their bill statement,
see,
so.
And believe me, I put it out on
I've never
every
seen
Newport
this
Facebook
symbol
page today, and I got
I've
one
never seen
comment.
it either. It's
I mean, that's the formula. Why is
Yeah,
it just
the Express did a good job, I thought, covering the meaning during it.
potentially it doesn't like it.
Thinking it doesn't.
But is that the only place where you put it?
Yeah.
No comments.
Yeah, so I took this, so I added everything up, right? And I increased it by did 15% to see what was going in capital
Yeah.
reserve. And I just wanna add that number to that and
Put it outside the parentheses? You have a parentheses in there, right? You got a parentheses. Where does it start? It's times that.
right, times the sum of that. And that's fine. It's this one that's not fine.
Okay, so where do you wanna add it? Do you wanna add it
I wanna
into,
add all those things together. And then it brings up this crazy thing.
you highlight that and see if it says what it is? Nothing.
Nothing. All right, I'm gonna see if I can backdoor this.
So how much are we thinking we need to add to water for, did you come up with a figure?
An additional 90,000 if we're gonna service a $3 million debt
Yeah,
over
Okay.
20 years,
So what was our figure before?
100.
so we're changing 100 to
I
190.
think it was 100 and then 72.
Okay, so we wanna get to, what, 1.19?
12, is it 1272?
Yeah, that's for the,
Okay, just, if somebody give me a number that's understandable, 1 million what?
I'm getting
There it is.
1.349.
1.349. Will you take 1.334?
Yeah,
Depends, what's the number we're working with?
70% increase in water.
How can that be? How can it have jumped?
It's jumping too fast.
It's
That's
jumping
a-
too high too
that's a
fast.
huge,
yeah.
Something's wrong.
That's why we have to work on this. But
Check and double
just-
check our numbers, yeah.
Right.
Okay, I might be.
I think it should have gone up like 2 or 3%.
yeah, it should have been like
That's what I
55, maybe
originally said,
56 at the
that it was
most.
going up.
2 and 3%.
2 or 3% from the 55 we were working. 53% we were working with to like 55%.
Okay, okay. Oh my word, I ain't gonna do
It would've
anything.
been like 55 point.
Yeah.
We were, so by adding the water tower at 195,
Right,
that brought us to 1.165
right.
without the 15% capital reserve. So 15% capital reserve is another 184,000. So that brings our total to, my column's not big enough to show the number.
Not a good sign.
Never a good sign.
Yeah,
Right.
1.349 million that we're looking for to meet all those criteria.
I mean, we could go back and, I mean, this is why if we have some more time, it would be good to play with this and double check that these are all going across. I built it in
So
speed
can you
thing.
figure out what the percentage increase would be if we are looking to have 1.349 thousand?
That's where we came up with the 70%.
Yeah. I got 70% based on what our February, usage. Yeah.
And we haven't
I
even
mean,
gotten
we
to,
should flow this over a year, is one of the things, to be fair, but, because we're at one of our lowest usage, so it should be more for everything else. So I think, the possibility is we'll drop down by 10% at least if we flow on this on an annualized.
it'll go up 10% or?
No, it will drop,
Down.
it will drop,
You said you were at 70%.
yeah. On all of the different categories, yeah. And if we include all the categories, we still have a few, more unknowns. But, and then, the other unknown we have to take into consideration is if you get told this is what's gonna happen, are you not gonna do everything you can to cut your water usage?
Mhm. And thereby cut our revenue.
Yeah.
Well, you can't project that, so we might as well
No,
not worry
and I
about it.
think the thing to do is take this, double check it. Paul can double check it too, I can send it to him.
Yeah.
And we can do it on annualized basis, just skip the November billing that had the, whatever it was, 10, probably, I forgot what it was, 27 million, which, was an oddity. And just see what happens.
So what this is suggesting to me is that Rick's idea of pushing the council meeting back to Wednesday night is looking better and better so that we can get together again Monday night and finalize all of
Yeah,
this.
but if we've announced the public meeting for Sunday, we gotta have this done by Sunday, so.
Well, I think what we have to do by Sunday,
Yeah, we don't have anything done. We can say this is what we're thinking.
on Sunday, we can say we plan for another meeting tomorrow night of the committee.
Yeah,
And what we're leaning toward is the simplest possible way to add up the total cost of providing water and sewer and dividing it using roughly the same formula, accounting for the fact that we're backing out the high increases for non-metered residential that were done in the last 2 sessions, and then saying everybody's gonna bear the brunt of this in roughly equal measure. We can have that conversation, and then honestly, have an open conversation in which we let them all in on the dilemma. And share, yeah, here's what we're up against. These are the things we need to account for.
Right,
And let folks get a sense of just how challenging this is.
yeah.
Without trying to say, we can say to them, we're not intending to hit the final number this afternoon, but we wanted you all to know as much as we know.
This is what is gonna have to happen to get us through the year. Yeah.
Yeah, and the concept of the 15% capital reserve is that 15 is the maximum allowed by statute.
Right.
So, we could temper a little bit by saying
Correct.
10%.
yeah,
For
but the sewer
instance.
plant's getting old,
Well, I'm looking
Yeah.
at the water side
Yeah.
right now.
Right.
I
Yeah.
haven't even gotten this.
Right.
yeah.
Because there needs to be separate capital reserve account, a water one and a sewer one.
Right with you. One of my big notes on my notes as we started tonight was, if we're going with this cap reserve,
Yeah.
a number one priority is an actual designated fund that nobody can touch.
Exactly.
Which means a
And
separate
water,
bank account, right?
Yes.
Okay, thank
and
you.
water and sewer actually have to be separate from each other.
Understood.
Yeah.
I get it.
Yeah.
So just a quick question on something you just said, Rick. Can you make sure that you said something about going back to for the non-metered, going back to the number that was paid before the last increase. So we need to know what that number is.
We've got it.
Okay, I'm just
It's
saying,
not a problem, yeah.
I've people are gonna wanna know
The
if
sewer
it's-
part of the formula for that, which is what I was trying to.
So we would make
figure
it
out.
clear that we understand that the rate was inequitably applied or created in the last session. We're gonna correct for that, and then we're gonna say everybody's gonna bear some pain, and we're gonna make it as equal as we can across the board for all users.
I think you also may want to highlight that several years ago, we committed to the East Side Water Tower. It did not get built right away because of COVID and other things.
Yep.
But we committed back then that we would bear the burden of that building, and now it's come to fruition. It's just about completed, and now we have to pay that bill
Right,
over time.
over time.
Okay, just the figures I now have, I have the residential sewer, which is the one that went up, what did it go up from? Anyway, it's the one that went up 28%, and it went up to 190. We're basing our new formula based on 163, okay? So that should be fair, that should be equate to what everybody else is paying, give or take the fact that the percentages have been done, across the board by percent as opposed to taking the same figures. So there's a little sort of, a few dollars screw up. And we could straighten that out now if we want to, or, not. I think we can flow both of them. So unfortunately, 163 is still a lot, but that's what you do if you're paying base. And what do we need for sewer money?
We need,
And do we have our capital budget in there?
yeah, for sewer, we need,
Basically 2 million, no?
Yeah, 1.984.
Oh, good, I
So-
over-budgeted.
well, no, you haven't because I don't have the 15% in there.
Okay,
This says it does. Total with CRF, 198.
Oh, which, did I already do that?
It looks like you already did sewer cost to treat versus rates.
Yeah. It's on the second page, yeah.
Okay.
Sheet you sent us.
Okay, so what have we decided we're looking for, 2 million?
Yep.
Yes, 2 million.
And that does not include, there's no outstanding loans for sewer. It's just capital reserve fund, right?
No, there are some
There's loans out there.
There are, but they're included in the budget.
They are included.
Loan service for that is included.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Okay.
It's so
So yes,
close that.
2 million.
Oh, wow. Hang on, we'll get there. We just keep on going down here. 67%.
67?
And that,
That needs some fine tuning because I'm missing some of the vacant and stuff like that, but yeah.
Alright, so
I
we've
think
got
those are major ones.
water at 70. Sewer.
It does mean
67.
residential sewer base rate is $272.
Yep.
Metered.
No, that's the unmetered. But you use 13.5, you're there.
So that's gonna put unmetered people at $400 a month.
400.
A quarter.
Quarter,
No,
sorry.
unmetered is 272.
But
Plus
plus
water.
water.
Oh, yeah.
He's saying,
that's what- yeah.
which is the number using my household that I just rough calculated,
Yeah,
Yeah.
right?
yep.
Yeah.
So that is on par with, so, 136 meter base
Probably the only
plus,
time we're gonna be on par with Stowe.
plus, yeah,
Well, then I don't like to hear that.
so,
So is it $400 for both water and sewer?
It's about-
Per meter,
Yeah,
per quarter?
Plus or minus, yeah.
yeah. Yeah, we'll fine tune them.
Right.
I mean, you
So-
can figure it out because we've got a combined base rate and usage rate, which is what it's made up of $17.23.
I think the
That right?
unmetered people thought they were going, if anything, if they got to be equal again, they were going to come down from whatever they were paying of
Yeah.
900.
Yeah.
Now you're going to tell them that they'll be paying $1,600 a year.
Yeah.
Because
and-
everybody was paying 70% less than it cost to run the system.
Yeah.
But like John said, for 7 years, you had a real big grace period,
Yeah.
and now it's time to pay the piper.
Yeah.
which sucks for
everything
people like
happens to
me
be
who moved
coming
here
in.
3 years ago.
Yeah.
Picking up the tab for fucking people who left after 30 years.
Well, you win some.
I mean,
you
I'm
lose
just
some.
gonna say it, like, we're not the only ones that are losing. Just because we're metered doesn't mean we're winning.
No, that's right. And I'll just add, the one thing that we're not calculating here that is easy to forget is the fact that we're also still showing a $2 million owed to others debt on the water and sewer balance sheet that we haven't even talked about tonight.
Yeah.
Which is how do we get ourselves out of the hole that we dug? All this does is break even and make sure that we're being responsible about future payments.
Right.
It doesn't do anything about the fact that we've dug ourselves into this hole.
Yeah.
right,
So technically, you've got
which
a
just
combined rate
exacerbates
of,
the sort of discounted ride everybody's had for 7 years if they've been here the
yeah,
whole time.
27.
That's right. That's right.
Over $27 a gallon, 1,000 gallons.
So Rick, is that the money that we keep talking about,
So Jennifer,
looking for
I'm.
financing, bond? So that's,
Bond.
we,
What do you
okay,
have?
so
Do you have
that's,
any
yeah.
time Friday?
And honestly, I don't know where we're gonna end up on
Yes.
that. I have another meeting with the attorneys tomorrow
I'm thinking.
because it's not at all clear to me how we're gonna
Yeah,
move forward with
yeah.
that.
And look through the spreadsheet.
Based on the wording of the charter
If you're aware
primarily.
of that.
That's the
Yeah,
primary challenge.
I'm trying to think.
There's
what
gotta
the
be a way to
Friday
deal with
is.
it, but I don't know what it is yet.
I can't,
Taxpayer
I can
pays.
send it to you.
Yeah, you
And
can-
I didn't bring my.
Any way you do it, it's gonna hit
And I
somebody
don't have
somewhere
my-
the same way. I
Oh,
mean,
hang on, maybe I can bring that up.
we can't,
This is a huge increment in and of itself.
I know. But it doesn't deal with the fact that we've deficit spent for roughly 9 years.
Right.
I think also there's a commitment, I would think, that expenses will be seriously looked at for the future.
That's part of that phase two,
Yeah,
three,
yeah,
four, five that we're
Well,
gonna
yeah.
get the next few
Together in the
months.
But I didn't.
Proper
have-
fiscal practices.
Because I'm usually busy in the afternoons.
Okay.
But I wanna be careful about that too, because honestly, I don't know
I'll
what's in
shoot
that
you an
expense
email.
side, and it
Okay,
may be that
yeah.
nothing can
So
be
as long as
adjusted.
I'm
The
out
truth
by,
is,
1
a lot of
o'clock,
our
Yeah.
costs are fixed by union negotiations and things that we aren't in control of.
Yeah, and I didn't want to talk about this at the beginning of this conversation, but like there's a certain point where like, do we have a trunk line that goes way out and services 2 houses and it's like really not worth operating? You know, like do you disconnect lines that are just like economically infeasible to maintain in the long run? Like I don't really want to go down that road right now, but you
I
know,
really
like
think you really-
disincorporating parts of town is one thing, but saying we cannot afford to maintain a service line any longer and that residents are, I mean, like, that's a hard conversation to have, but
But I would guess, I mean, like my whole side is not, we have septic, so we don't even have, we have water, we don't have septic. So, and that's, I don't know where that ends, Tom. Do you know where? Does it end at Wildflower or somewhere around there, or the church?
You
Up-
talking
up to
sewer?
Mountain View? Yeah, the
I think
sewer.
Wildflower.
I mean,
Wildflower.
Yeah.
what's that?
Wildflower.
Yeah, Wildflower.
Possible.
So, so from there out,
And they
of
pump it.
105
they
West,
pump it
we all have
back in,
septic.
so-
So that's,
Their cost,
it's
right?
highly likely
Yeah.
that there are
Yeah.
areas that,
Yeah, the whole,
Yeah,
right
it's
away
all-
from Barbara out, doesn't have.
yeah.
I know.
Okay, so can I kind of recap where I think we are and what we need? So, at this point, everything I'm hearing indicates that we should plan on moving the special council meeting to consider these matters to Wednesday night, the 30th. And we should, in order to be ready for the public forum on Sunday afternoon, Paul, we will need copies of the Paul's worksheet budget
Yep.
to share with folks.
Yep.
And we will need the Paul and Jennifer magic
Yeah.
on looking at a variety of different ways to arrive at our new rates. And we will need 2 other things. Patrick's look at how other towns do it, right? And where we come in. And then finally, I think we probably need a 1-page summary sheet that says,
which is this, really.
Right, which is, I started that,
This is
I've gotta
great.
get rid of the bottom half of it, and
Sure.
I'm just gonna insert this, the original rate structure.
Yeah.
there we go.
No, I
So
think-
that's pretty much done.
And does that include the rationale that we're gonna back out the high rate increase for the non-metered
No,
residential?
because I just learned that.
Okay, so, but I'm saying it should include that when you go back to it, Paul.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes,
So
Yeah.
if we had a document, just your 1-page document that kind of spells all of that out, then I think we've got what we need for the meeting on Sunday, which is to say this is still a work in progress. We wanted to give you all as much information as we can. We're gonna meet tomorrow night, Monday night then. And we had scheduled to meet at 4:30 Monday afternoon in advance of the council meeting. We can keep that time, or we can move it to the 6:30 slot for an evening meeting for all of us, or 6, whatever time. In other words, we can be flexible about that now if you want on Monday night. For this group.
yeah.
5 would make it easier. Anything after 5 would make it easiest for me.
Yeah, yeah.
5 o'clock?
Everybody, yeah, we're
Yeah.
saying both of that.
5 o'clock on Monday.
Okay.
So Jennifer and I just agreed, so I'm not gonna send you guys my budget spreadsheet until Jennifer and I are gonna meet
Good.
on Friday.
Love it.
And we're going to
Compare.
make sure everything,
Watching the 2 of you is pretty fascinating, I'll just say.
So,
from
I'm
afar.
really grateful for the 2 of you.
So am I, that's
Really.
what I meant to
All of
say.
you look.
5 o'clock on Monday, okay.
so Monday's getting moved.
And then we expect 6:30 on Wednesday.
6.
6.
Wednesday will be our normal council time of 6 o'clock.
And do
Yeah,
you
don't-
want
don't
all
tell
of
me
us
6:30.
here?
I would love it if you would come and have our backs
Okay.
and help us answer
And
questions.
Sunday is 4:30 at the Gateway, or where is
Yes,
it?
no, it's here.
Here.
Sunday, 4:30 here, Monday, 5 PM,
Wednesday, 6.
Wednesday, 6 PM. And I will change those meeting
6
warnings.
PM on Wednesday, and what was Sunday?
Sunday 4:30.
Sunday, 4:30 in this room.
Monday 5.
And I think everybody
Wednesday,
except Sean
6:30.
Six.
is available Sunday, right?
I think so.
John, you're not available, is that correct?
It was 6:30, you think, for Wednesday?
Yeah.
No, Wednesday is 6.
That's what I
Oh,
thought.
6?
Yeah.
Wednesday is 6.
6, yeah.
So 4:30 Sunday, 5 PM Monday, 6 PM Wednesday.
Got it.
And then we'll be
Why don't
back
make
to
it
our
Tuesday?
regular
I mean,
meeting
let's go
on
for Tuesday.
I'm not done yet. We may-
Friday to the finance meeting.
All right, and then, but I just want to make sure, Jennifer, Paul, Carl, and Patrick, you're all available to be here on Sunday afternoon to help answer questions, because
I'm going to be racing to get here by
Oh.
4:30.
we'll take you when you
Depends.
get here.
Okay.
Yeah.
Depends on how many cars are out there when I pull in.
Oh yeah, turn around and go back into Fox Lane or.
Actually, I think I have a Legion.
Oh,
On Sunday afternoon?
Yeah, hold on 1 second.
So long as there's some of you here.
Yeah, no, I think 3 people is.
Yeah, if I had Jennifer, Paul, and Patrick, we could make it work.
The numbers people.
The numbers people.
Nope, I'm good. It's the
All right.
26th.
Okay, then that's our plan, and I will rewarn, I'll change those meetings tonight. And I'll let, John, I'm assuming, of course, Wednesday night works for you for a special council meeting.
Oh, yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
as both Carter, Andrew, and Kevin all got back to me this evening and said, yeah, they could do that. So I'll let them know. I do think we've come up with the only reasonable, quick course forward, so. And I think the only room to play in the numbers we were messing around with is probably in that cap expense for a year or two, you know, and say, we could lower that back off from the 15%.
Yeah,
We have
because
to.
ultimately something is better than the nothing we've had.
That's
for
right.
That, from the point of view of future planning.
Yeah, and the truth is, there is a lot that we're still guessing at. And we'll know a whole lot more 6 months from now, and hopefully, two years down the road, we'll be working on finishing those meters, and we'll know a lot more after that, too.
Right.
Yeah, let's hope so.
I think you need to give the council a bit of time to consider the new budget, what they vote on.
You can throw
I mean,
that
I don't
out.
think
That's
they
no
can
good.
vote on.
Well, they'll have access to
I
it
got
on
my
Sunday.
notes.
Oh, your notes.
Pardon?
They'll have access to it on Sunday, just like everyone else does.
I'm talking about voting on the water
On
and
the
sewer
council.
budget.
Yeah,
At the
so am I.
council meeting. Okay,
Yeah, I'm saying that the council will have access to that budget. Wednesday night, the first thing on the agenda will be to consider and approve the budget. And then we'll talk about how we're gonna adjust the rates accordingly. We can't really adjust the rates until we have an actual budget that we've approved. So, though
Wednesday.
it appears to have been done in the past. Or not.
6 PM.
Okay, are we done tonight?
Yep. The only
I
thing,
think so.
Everybody looks a little shell shocked. I say we
Jennifer and
quit.
I gotta set up our time for Friday, but we'll do that over email.
Okay, thank you all very much, and for all the work that went into getting us to tonight, especially from Jennifer and Paul and Patrick, thank you.
Oh, for
Very
sure,
good,
without their number crunching ability, we'd be spinning our wheels
No
big
kidding.
time.
Absolutely. And you guys started flowing.